Okay. We are moving on. There she is. Moving on to the consent agenda. And so earlier we pulled F and G to be heard after we have the other discussion. So we need anyone want to pull anything from this consent? A through E and H, I. Anyone?
I'll move to
Okay.
approve the consent agenda items A through E and H and I.
Second.
Okay, so that has been moved by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Luke. Is there any conversation about any of this?
Thank you, staff, for answering my questions.
Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and have our motion here. And that is unanimous. Now we get to public comment. And we have one public commenter, Miss Aline Allen Emmerich. I know I said that name right. Saying it for a long time.
Hello. I come to you guys, Elaine Allen Emmerich, Highland Ridge. I come to you guys today on my day off as a longtime resident and not a reporter. Earlier this year, I attended a community neighborhood meeting in the older section of town, and it was there that residents spoke up about quality of life issues, including rat infestations, code violations for things like clutter and trash issues that devalue the neighborhood. And so more recently, commissioners have spoke up about how they would like to see some community improvements in some of these older neighborhoods that have not been left behind. So fast forward to today. 3 weeks ago, I was called and asked to help a grandmother of 3 grandchildren, ages 5, 7, and 9. She has custody of them as her son is addicted to opioids, and so the burden falls on her. However, the children were removed from the family, the grandmother, by DCF. And what I learned this weekend is DCF doesn't come into a home unless it's really bad. Like, they won't remove children unless it's really bad. So I come to you to tell you it's really bad. But I knew, as a member of the Early Bird Kiwanis in Northport for the Children, that I could get some resources. I knew that there were things that I could do to reach out and help this woman, aside from just cleaning the house. Because this house, it needs to be gutted. We're going to pretend there was a fire, and that everything needs to go so that the rats, including the rats, can go. So here was my problem. The city of Northport has no mechanism in place that could help someone like me, who's a stranger to this woman, begin the process. So what I did was call Julie Belia and say, hey, can you please waive more than just the 2 pickups? This woman's going to need 10, 12 pickups. She needs a hot water heater. Can you waive the hot water permit fee? We get there needs to be a permit, but there's a fee involved. And so what I come to you today for is 2 things. Number 1, some form of your old Nice Guys program where teams of people who want to help in extreme situations like this one can exist. And then secondly, more of a list from department to department of what really can be waived to help somebody who's indigent and to help nonprofit groups who want to help, but the less I have to help pay for fees, the better off she'll be in getting these kids back, because she can save the money for food. So I am coming to you to ask you if you guys can give a waiver of the bulk pickups for approximately 2 months until this house is clean and devoid of the rats, so that it helps your neighborhood, which is one that you guys are talking about improving anyway. So thank you very much.
How many bulk pickups did you need, did you say?
Here's the thing, it's not even halfway done, so I estimate there to be about six, seven more. Now, I was told anybody who wants to donate can, so I jumped on Facebook, and people will donate. I've got 3 weeks worth. But again, is that the process I have to do every single time, or can the city commission say, look, we recognize there's evidence of a true cleanup? Because there's code enforcement violations. So can those hold off until stuff is cleaned out, DCF makes this, their walkthrough, and then it's a solid house again?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Commission, how do we go forward in this request? We don't have a mechanism to waive any fees for bulk pickup, do we?
We do not have a mechanism for waiving that. What I can tell you, the commission in the past has covered certain fees for trash pickups and items. It has to be covered by the general fund because solid waste has to collect for their services. So in situations like this, it can, if you want to direct money to come from the general fund to pay for these things, that's up to commission. And I get it's a great idea, and nothing against this individual or anything else. If this is an ongoing thing, just I don't want to be the one that has to tell somebody no, that we're using taxpayer dollars to help an individual. That's something that if you all want to do that, that's not something I would recommend putting on staff to say yes or no to an individual situation.
That's a commission derivative. But the mechanism not being there is an issue. So we need to, place the mechanism, somehow create that, and have some sort of a stopgap on there where they only get this one time in, 6 years or something.
Correct. And some of the things that were mentioned, like the Nice Guys program, that was one city employee. This was back in 2010, I think it was. Yeah. City employees going out on their own time and volunteering to do things like paint somebody's house or clean up their front yard or something like that. It still didn't cover paying for city services.
But didn't we ask to re-implement that during our?
I thought we did, yeah.
I thought
we
did. Talked about doing something like this.
And we can, again, I believe you did talk about implementing
hearings.
something of that. And it's something we can implement, but again, that would not fix this situation because this is a dollars and cents thing. This is not employees volunteering their time.
Well, I don't remember it was volunteer time. I thought it was on the city time that they were going to do this Nice Guy program. I guess I got confused.
The last time the Nice Guys program, it was on weekends. It was something city employees did as volunteer work.
All right. Well, we'll get the other commissioners before we go forward with the consensus. Commissioner Yates?
Yeah, I just had a question on what we do through our social services division for people that come up with certain emergency or one-time needs. Could any of that be utilized in this circumstance?
There was not anything in the social services because we did forward this on to social services to investigate those. So no, there was nothing there either.
Okay. Commissioner Luke?
I see it being tied more to something like that. The Nice Guy program, is nice, but the city's a whole lot larger than it was back when it was implemented. But we have made a proclamation for a kindness community. I think that's another avenue that things like this could be addressed through, maybe in conjunction with social services or something like that. I cannot believe how many entire households have been drugged to the curb in the last 2 months. Entire blocks, it looked like, were being, I don't know how the solid waste has kept up with what they've been doing. It's just everything out of the house sitting at the curb. So kudos to solid waste. That's a lot of work. Kudos to those who care about the community and want to help. And I think maybe it is a kindness community that needs to reach out, such as Holly's Hope was done through the community. And I think kindness community can maybe step forward too.
Commissioner McDowell?
We had given direction for them to bring back when we were talking about the community, the blight areas and stuff, and we were going to have a much larger discussion, and maybe that would be a good way to talk about this program and see how we can put some mechanism in place. Maybe that would be a good time during that discussion.
So can we get consensus to have this, now, in the meantime, it's not going to help the current situation, but can we get consensus to maybe bring this mechanism for cleaning up residents in an extreme condition on a one-time basis, as well as re-implementing something similar to the Nice Guy program, but under the city's, I would say, you know, throughout the city paying for some of it, because that is part of our community kindness. Commissioner Luke is very on the ball on that. But to come back in a workshop or special meeting, maybe even one of our special days in January or February, can we get consensus to do that?
But when is staff going to bring back about the blight areas and stuff and have the conversation at that same time? The revitalization program for the older sections of town,
Oh,
we had talked about that, and that seems like a very good time to have this further discussion.
Let's do that. We'll have all those conversations about how to handle redevelopment of the blight areas and the Nice Guy program, as well as the mechanism for cleaning up residents in extreme conditions. And if we can do that within, I don't know, February? Is February okay, or it's 3 months away?
We can have it in February,
Okay.
as long as we can get a meeting scheduled.
Yeah, well, we have after January 1st, we have those special meetings held, so we have time now. So if we can get some consensus for that,
Yes,
Commissioner Hanks?
it's the same meeting that we've already given
Yeah.
authorization on. We're just
Yes.
expanding it.
So there was a lot of conversation in that. I just want to be clear. So it's to have that conversation about starting a program or a mechanism, right, for these type situations along with the revitalization conversation?
And the Nice Guy
And the
program.
Nice Guys?
Yep, it's
Okay.
3 parts. Yep.
Okay.
So you're a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Like
Commissioner
it's
Luke?
allowed to handle in a meeting, but as long as you're talking, I guess they can all be lumped together.
Okay. So that's
You may find
unanimous. You very clear there, City Manager?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. All right, moving on. So, because we have about 10 minutes, can...
2 minutes.
Huh?
2 minutes.
No, we have 2 minutes. Okay, so
We got to switch over.
what we need to do is recess this, not recess, what's the word I'm looking for there?
You're gonna
My
recess?
brain.
You're gonna
Thank you.
recess?
Recess until after the
District.
district meetings, plural, right?
Yep.
Okay. So
And
we need a motion for that.
I'll
So
move.
moved.
second.
All right, moved by Commissioner McDowell to recess the meeting till after the districts have been heard, and seconded by Vice Mayor Yates. Is there any conversation about that? Okay, let's go ahead and vote on that.
Before we vote
Oh.
on that, and maybe I should have asked before, but do you have an order that you're doing the next meeting
No.
for the public?
No.
Okay. You
No.
were getting ready to?
To come and ask her to put the drainage.
Okay. All
Road
right.
and drainage next.
The commission special meeting first, then fire rescue, then solid waste, then road.
Okay. Special meeting, then fire rescue, and then road and drainage.
Solid waste.
Solid waste. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask before we
Thank
recess.
you. Good idea. Okay. So now we're clear.
Ready to vote?
Yeah, we're waiting on. And that is unanimous. Excellent. Now, Okay, folks, it's 5:01. I don't have a cheat sheet for this, guys, so you'll have to forgive me, but we are opening the Fire Rescue District,
City Commission, regular.
wait, City Commission special meeting. And we have all the same that were present here before. Or should I guess it's a separate meeting I should go
Yeah.
through. Hold on. Sorry. That's solid waste. And fiber. I'm just missing. Excellent, okay. We'll wait until we get all these papers straightened out. We're gonna talk about environmentalists and we have a tree sitting here. Okay, so now we can call the regular, or the City Commission special meeting to order. Present are Deputy Clerk Pito, City Clerk Rainbow, City Commissioner. Oh, wow. 10 years and I still say it, right?
Wow, that's a flashback.
That's a bad one. And City
I know what it
Clerk
feels like.
Atkins. I know, right? City Commissioner, Commissioner Luke, Vice Mayor Yates, Commissioner McDowell, Commissioner Hanks, I'm getting there. Ms. Slayton, our City Attorney, or City Manager Peter Lear for the police. I have no idea because I can't see him. Oh, the chief, just hiding back there. And
Incognito.
always. And I think that's it. I guess we did the pledge earlier. We don't have to do that again, do we? So let's go ahead and get a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and that's been moved by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner McDowell. Is there any conversation about that? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote on that. I'll get it together, guys. I'm sorry.
You're doing fine. It's your first vote.
All right, and that is unanimous.
Mayor?
Yep.
I have one public comment card. It says for tree removal. There's no agenda item, and I'm not sure if the public commenter wants to speak at this meeting or the road and drainage. It's
Why don't
not
we ask him?
indicated.
This is Edie Dries. Did you want to speak with this, on this? Okay. Well, you are more than welcome to speak on this.
Edie Dries from Northport. So I'm here today to bring to your attention what goes on in our city. You may already know about a recent occurrence, but what happened is someone illegally took down trees that were on the city's right-of-way. The right-of-way was at the edge of a canal. These folks apparently had a permit to clear their own lot, but did not have a permit to clear the city's. They had been told specifically what they could clear, so what happened was no accident. This activity was captured on video, which had been shared with our city manager. I would like to know what the perpetrator was fined. From what I've seen in the past, the fine for clearing illegally is minimal. This lines up with what happened a few months ago in my neighborhood. There was clearing on a property where heavy equipment was used, even to the extent of compacting the soils with a big roller machine. This particular activity occurred over the weekend and there was no permit posted to clear. I tried to get through to the city during the weekend but could not because no one answers the phone then. I learned the fine was a mere $91. Some months ago, I did ask for a public records request of fines that have been issued to folks for clearing illegally, and there were quite a few. Imagine the number of clearings that occur under the radar. Why is this important? Well, there's a chance heritage trees are removed illegally, and we're supposed to support a 35% canopy. Trees do have benefits, the likes of erosion control. Think about the trees taken down on the edge of that canal. It's only logical the roots of the trees help solidify the earth. Also, trees are the lungs of our earth. Wildlife uses them, and many folks appreciate their natural beauty. Also, this is important because heavy machinery can easily run over gopher tortoise burrows, which is illegal because the animal is a protected species. And if the land is compacted, the tortoises can be buried alive and die a slow death. So that this doesn't continue, I would ask to please implement 3 preventative measures, such as 1, require anyone who is clearing land to post the permit on the property so anyone questioning the legality of the clearing won't waste the city's time when inquiring. And I know that there's already a requirement to do that, but a lot of people don't put up the sign that they have a permit. Increase the fine, and also create a weekend phone line that folks can call in to report these violations. Your consideration for making this change is appreciated. If we are a real tree city USA, I would hope we'd do the work it takes to protect them. And as for Senator Stubbe's bill, I would hope you all, with a collective voice, would let your voice be heard that home rule should rule. Thank you.
Thank you. City manager, if you could get someone to talk to Ms. Drees about, I know that we've had communications about it, but unless you know something on the top of your head.
We will have staff get in touch with you. You can have a detailed explanation of what happened.
Thank you.
You'll keep us posted on that?
Yes, I believe I already sent you all something
Yeah.
on it.
Did,
Okay.
okay.
It must
So-
be mixed in with all the other emails from other discussions.
So now we're moving on to public hearings, and we go to item 3A. This is the third reading of ordinance number 2017-24, adoption of certification of ad valorem millage rate of 3.4070 for fiscal year 2017-18. City clerk, read by title only, please.
She has to, sorry, this has to be read by its entirety.
Okay,
Here we go.
here we go. Thank you. Good catch.
Ordinance number 2017-24, an ordinance of the City of Northport, Florida, providing for adoption and certification of an ad valorem millage rate for the 2017-18 fiscal year, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing an effective date. Be it ordained by the City Commission of the City of Northport, Florida, whereas on September 7th, 2017, the City Commission conducted a public hearing and considered ordinance 2017-24 at its first reading and continued the ordinance to second reading on September 21st, 2017. The City Commission conducted another public hearing and considered the ordinance at its second reading and by majority vote, approved and adopted the ordinance, which the mayor then executed, and whereas on November 1st, 2017, the city received a notice from the Department of Revenue stating the prior year property tax levy and the notice of proposed tax increase advertised required by Section 200.065 in parens 3A Florida statutes was incorrect. The budget summary advertisement did not follow the language Section 200.06531 Florida statutes as required. Although the calculations in the ordinance were correct, the incorrect advertisement failed to comply with the requirements of the Florida statutes and the Florida Administrative Code, and whereas in order to comply with Florida statutes Section 200.06513 and to validate any defect the inaccurate advertisement may have caused in the ordinance's second public hearing and reading, the city has properly and timely re-advertised the ordinance, and on November 13th, 2017, the City Commission again conducted a public hearing and considered the ordinance. Section 1, Certification and Adoption, 1.01, the City Commission hereby certifies and adopts a millage, adopts a tax millage of 3.4070 for the purpose of providing sufficient and ad valorem taxes required for the operation of the general government for fiscal year 2017-18. Fiscal year 2017-18 begins October 1st, 2017 and ends September 30th, 2018. Section 2, Levying and Assessment. Section 2, Levying and Assessment 2.01. There is hereby levied and assessed a tax on all taxable property, real and personal, within the corporate limits of the city of Northport, Florida, except homestead exemptions as defined in Article 10 of the Constitution of the State of Florida as amended. It is now or shall be provided for by general law as follows. For the general government appropriation for operating expenses and expenditures contained in Ordinance 2017-25, a tax millage of 3.4070, which represents a 5.31 increase over the rolled back millage rate of 3.2352. Section 3, conflicts. 3.01, if there is any conflict between the provisions of this ordinance and any other resolution or ordinance or portions thereof, the provisions of this ordinance shall prevail to the extent of such conflict. Section 4, severability. 4.01, if any section, subsection, sentence, clause, phrase, or portion of this ordinance is for any reason held invalid or unconstitutional by any court of competent jurisdiction, such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provision, and such holding shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions. Section 5, effective date. 5.01, this ordinance shall become effective October 1st, 2017, and then it will state, read in public session this blank day of 2017, passed and adopted on the second reading in public session this blank day, which we will fill in the dates with September 7th and September 21st, and then it will state passed and readopted on the final reading in public session, and that will be today's date inserted in there, November 13th, 2017. It will be signed by the mayor, Vanessa Carasone, and it will be attested by the city clerk and signed as approved to form and correctness by the city attorney. Thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk. Is there any questions? Since we've already had this conversation once, twice. Anyone? Okay, if not, I'll have a motion.
I'll move the third reading of ordinance number 2017-24 for the adoption and certification of the ad valorem millage rate of 3.4070 for fiscal year 2017-18.
Second.
That is moved and by Commissioner McDowell, seconded by Commissioner Luke. Is there any comments, Commissioner McDowell? Nope. Commissioner Luke?
Nope.
With that, anyone else? Seeing no lights, let's vote. Wait, we gotta clear the screen. And action. And that is 4-1. Wait, Commissioner McDowell? You made the motion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you still voted against it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. The reasons I voted against it the second time still stand for the.
I'm sorry, but we can't have any cell phones on in the chambers. Someone's on their cell phone.
Ma'am.
Hello? Ma'am? Thank you. Okay, so that was 4-1 with the Commissioner McDowell dissenting as stated.
As stated in the second reading.
And the, yeah, in the second reading,
Yeah.
and today, okay. And now we move on to the third reading of ordinance number 2017-25. And this we can read by title only. Actually, the clerk's happy about that.
This is number 2017-25. Okay, ordinance number 2017-25, an ordinance of the City of Northport, Florida, adopting a non-district budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2017 and ending on September 30th, 2018, adopting the capital improvement budget and program prescribing the terms, conditions, and provisions with respect to the items of appropriation and their payment, providing for supplemental appropriations and reappropriations, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing an effective date. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner?
Okay. This is a third time around, and I just wanted to make sure it's stated, just to capture it for the record, that in the CIP, the summary page that listed the stadium as the city facility, as well as pages 7, 8, 11, 15, and 37, needed to be corrected before the adopted budget book is printed. In addition, the illustration of the pool needed to be showing the most current that was moved forward by the commission, showing the children's area separated from the lazy river. And then pages 53, 54, and 55 reference the wrong CIP year for the fire station 87, and so that needs to be corrected as well. And as duly noted on the second hearing, I just wanted to make sure those were on the record here. And if nobody has any other questions, I'll make a motion.
City manager has his.
I just wanted to let you know why those are still not corrected that were mentioned at the second reading, is because in order to be able to tell you this is exactly what we brought to you to the second reading, we didn't make any of those changes. But I appreciate you bringing them up again so that they are captured. I understand why you're doing that. I just wanted you to know that we didn't make those changes on purpose, so that otherwise we had to go through a lot of conversation we're hoping not to do.
Right.
So,
Make
no,
sure it's clear this wasn't intentional. Gotcha.
Right.
Okay, so go ahead and make the motion there, Vice Mayor.
All right, I'll move to approve ordinance number 2017-25, adopting the fiscal year 2017-18 non-district budget and capital improvement program with the amendments to the exhibits and project descriptions as was stated on the record.
Second.
That is moved by the Vice Mayor to approve with designated amendments, seconded by Commissioner Hanks. Is there anything else?
No, I just wanted to add, Mayor, I needed to say that just because this is a do-over, so.
I got a question in regards to that. I mean, when this was submitted and then they sent it back, were those corrections within the document that was issued?
That stuff actually is not sent to them. What was sent back was because of the ad that was placed in the newspaper.
Okay.
So the amendment actually is related to the final adopted budget book, which is printed in December or January is typically when we issue that book, and they will be in that document.
Okay, but it wasn't necessary at that point.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, if there is no further lights, let's go ahead and vote on this. And that passes 4-1 with Commissioner McDowell descending again with reasons stated in the second reading.
Same reasons. If the clerk needs me to restate it.
That would actually be helpful, so we wouldn't have to go back and listen to the other meeting.
So that I can use the exact same words. That's why I'm using the minutes. I will not support this motion for the same reason I did not support the millage rate. There is an item in the CIP that can be used for other things to benefit the majority of the citizens.
Thank you. Okay, so now we go on to public comment, and I do not have any more. And commission communications, anything on this item, folks? Okay. No? Okay, because we're going to have our communications at the end of the next meeting, so. Or the end meeting. Administrative and legal reports on this, and adjourned. Now we move on to fire rescue, right? Just want to make sure I'm not messing this up.
And it's 5:20.
Okay, and we are you guys okay to come back? Okay. Today is Monday, November 13th, 2017. It's 5:21. We're in the city chambers, and I call the Fire Rescue District meeting in order. Those present are Commissioner Carasone, Luke, Hanks, McDowell, and Vice Mayor Yates. We have City Manager Lear, City Attorney Slayton, City Clerk Atkins, Deputy City Clerk Pito, Police Chief Vespia, now that we can see him standing up. And just a couple of reminders, please, let's
He's sitting down.
Oh, we know. That was on purpose. But anyways, just a couple of reminders. Please put your cell phones on vibrate or silent. Just going to throw that out there. Anyone who wishes to speak on this, please go ahead and fill out one of these beautiful cards and hand it to the police officer over there. And with that, we're not going to do the pledge again. We need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
That was moved by Commissioner Hanks, seconded by Commissioner McDowell. Any conversation about that? As I choke to death? Nope, seeing none. And that is unanimous. We have no public comment, correct?
No public comment.
And the first reading of, excuse me, third reading of ordinance number 2017-26. Does that have to be written by title or entirety? And there it is. I knew it was coming. It's all right. By title only, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 2017-26, an ordinance of the City of Northport, Florida, adopting a fire rescue district budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2017, and ending on September 30th, 2018, prescribing the terms, conditions, and provisions with respect to the items of appropriation and their payment, providing for supplemental appropriations and reappropriations, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing an effective date. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there any questions, commissioners? Nope. No? Okay. Seeing no lights, do we have a motion? There.
Move to approve ordinance number 2017-26 for the third reading.
Second?
Second.
Okay, that has been moved by Commissioner Luke, seconded by Commissioner McDowell to approve ordinance number 2017-26. Commissioner Luke, do you have anything to say on this?
No.
Commissioner McDowell?
Oh, no, ma'am.
Vice Mayor Yates?
Yes, just because we have to repeat this, I do not support the budget. As I stated at the second hearing, the assessment revenue is $9 million, but the actual expenditures are around 8.4, and an excessive amount of $860,000 is being transferred out of for future purchases, and over $200,000 is being added to the fund balance, which is already far above the 25% emergency reserve policy. That $200,000 actually puts the fund balance surplus at around 47%. And that doesn't even account the funds that were put aside for capital acquisition purchases. And for that reason, I'm not supportive of the budget for the fire rescue.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, let's go ahead and vote.
Oh.
And that, did you want to?
No,
Okay.
I'm fine.
And that passes 4-1, right? With Commissioner Yates descending for reasons stated. Do we have any public comment, Commissioner Yates? Vice Mayor?
Nope.
And Commission of Communications? Administrative legal reports? With that, we're adjourned. Moving on.
It's 5:25 p.m.
Oof. You guys okay? We move on to solid waste? Let me know. Give me the finger. Not that one. A finger.
We're ready to go.
Okay. Today is Monday, November 13th, 2017. It is 5:25 p.m. We are in the city chambers, and I call the Solid Waste District special meeting to order. Those present are Mayor Carasone, Vice Mayor Yates, Commissioner Luke, Commissioner Hanks, Commissioner McDowell, City Manager Lear, City Attorney Slayton, City Clerk Atkins, Deputy City Clerk Pito, Chief of Police in the back there, Mr. Vespia. And just a couple of reminders. We'll say it again, and we'll wait for someone else to do it. Please turn your cell phones to vibrate or silent. Anyone wishing to speak, go ahead and fill out a card. And we move on to the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Okay, that's been moved by Commissioner Yates, seconded by Commissioner McDowell. Is there any conversation on that? Seeing no lights, let's go ahead and vote. And that passes unanimously. We have public comment
No
for
public
this.
comment.
Solid waste, no. Okay, no public comment. And this is the third reading of ordinance number 2017-2018, or 2028, sorry, adoption of fiscal year 2017-2018 solid waste district budget. And City Clerk, can you read by title only?
Yes, ma'am. Ordinance number 2017-28, an ordinance of the City of Northport, Florida, adopting a solid waste district budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2017, and ending on September 30th, 2018, prescribing the terms, conditions, and provisions with respect to the items of appropriation in their payment, providing for supplemental appropriations and reappropriations, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing an effective date. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions, Commission? No? And just for clarification, City Manager, this reduces, this budget allowed for a savings, correct, overall, right?
Yes, the rates were reduced.
Right, okay.
By $19.
Just want to make sure it's on the record, kind of. So we'll go ahead and take a motion.
I move that we approve ordinance, the third reading of ordinance number 2017-28.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved by Commissioner Luke, seconded by Vice Mayor Yates. Anyone have anything? Seeing no lights, let's go ahead and vote. And that is unanimous. We don't have any public comment for this, correct? No commission communications, no administrative legal reports, and we are adjourned.
It is 5:28 p.m.
Okay, give me the okay when you're ready.
Yes, ma'am.
These are like record-breaking meetings here.
One way to start it off.
Yeah, right?
Not like the marathon one you had.
Oh,
We're ready.
We're ready? Okay. Today is Monday, November 13th, 2017. It is 5:29. We are in the city chambers, and I call the Road and Drainage District Special Meeting to order. Those present are Mayor Carasone, Commissioner Luke, Commissioner Hanks, Commissioner McDowell, and Vice Mayor Yates. Also City Manager Lear, City Attorney Slayton, City Clerk Atkins, Deputy Clerk Pito, and Police Chief Vespia. Just a couple of reminders. I don't need to remind you again, do I? Okay. So let's go ahead and move right into the approval of agenda.
So moved?
Second.
Okay, so the agenda has been approved, moved by Commissioner McDowell, seconded by Vice Mayor Yates. Let's go ahead and vote. And that is unanimous. We do not have any public comment
No
on this,
public
road and
comment.
drainage? Nope. No, okay. So the 3A public hearing, third reading of ordinance number 2017-27, adoption of the fiscal year budget. City Clerk, can you read this by title only?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Ordinance number 2017-27, an ordinance of the City of Northport, Florida, adopting a road and drainage district budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2017, and ending on September 30th, 2018, prescribing the terms, conditions, and provisions with respect to the items of appropriation and their payment, providing for supplemental appropriations and reappropriations, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing an effective date. Thank you.
Thank you. Commission, is there any questions referring to this ordinance?
Hold for the motion.
No? We'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the third reading of ordinance number 2017-27 for the adoption of the fiscal year 2017-18 for Road and Drainage District.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second for the approval of the Okay. So it's been moved by Commissioner Luke to approve the ordinance number 2017-27, second by Commissioner Hanks. Do we have any other comments? Vice Mayor?
Yes, I do not support the budget for reasons that I disagree with some of the expenditures for the year. I believe we're taking on too much in this one year more than we should. And the rate increase exceeds what's needed for the ensuing year in expenditures. And the transfer out of $1.3 million for future purchases is excessive, and it's not needed within the next 5 years. And so the amount could have been reduced substantially, and therefore I do not support the budget.
Commissioner McDowell?
I will not support this motion for the same reasons I didn't for the second reading, which was because SLA number 18-5001 for pipe crew number 2 is not up at full capacity. I believe that we can make a budget amendment for that pipe crew number 3, that is that SLA 18-5001, when the time is right. I have concerns with the budget, especially that SLA, and maybe we can do this next fiscal year, and we have too many other projects planned at this time.
Thank you. So seeing no other lights, let's go ahead and have the vote. And that passes 3-2 with Commissioner McDowell and Yates descending for reasons stated, I assume? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you both.
I saved the commission time by not doing an amendment like we did the last time.
So now we move on to resolution number 2017-R-38, which is about the landscaping maintenance acceptance on Plantation Boulevard. City Clerk, can you read by title only, please?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Resolution number 2017-R-38, a resolution of the City of Northport, Florida, amending the conditions of acceptance of an easement relating to responsibility for landscaping and maintenance of Plantation Boulevard, sidewalks, and streetlights in instrument number 20160233413 of the official records of the Sarasota Clerk of the Circuit Court, providing for severability, providing for finding, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney, did you want to give us an intro to this? This is your, or City Manager, whoever.
We can both talk about this one, I'm sure, as well as our Public Works Director, if you'd like her to come up. This one's been talked about many times as far as the city taking over the landscape maintenance along Plantation Boulevard. We did do the abatement along there. As you can look in the agenda summary, you'll see that there's items that have been dating back to 2015 when the city took over the roadway itself, but did not take over the landscape maintenance. Commission gave direction earlier in the year to do the abatement, and once that was done and paid for, to bring back a resolution, which the city attorney worked with us on drafting. If you want more detail, like I say, we certainly can have Public Works come up, and the city attorney can also talk on it.
Okay, let's just go right into the questions. Commissioner McDowell?
First off, I'd like to ask the city attorney, has this, because there's some missing documentation in the backup materials, can we proceed with discussion on this?
I guess I'm not aware, Commissioner, of what's missing in the backup materials.
You provided us some materials right before the meeting, but okay, because it was noticed without all of the materials, that's why I just want to make sure we can proceed.
All right, let me clarify. Thank you for explaining that. So in the backup material to the agenda item, there was a resolution, and the resolution has an attachment, which is the plat entitled Panacea Plantation Boulevard. That plat has 10 sheets, but in the backup material, only 6 were included. The last few got cut off. That does not create any type of notice issue. I would just suggest that if the commission does move forward with adopting the resolution either as presented or in any amended format, that you just specify that the proper exhibit be attached in its entirety, and maybe, perhaps identify that is 10 pages.
Thank you. This trusty little map that was given to us before the meeting contradicts with what I am seeing on the property appraiser's website for where Woodland CDD starts and where Woodland CDD ends as far as plantation north of Panacea. According to, and I understand scale is different, but when I'm looking at the property appraiser's office, it looks like the line is more where, kind of looks like a, gosh, I don't know what you call it.
There's this conversation last time.
Yes, and it still hasn't, it still can't get any clear-cut answers, and the only thing I can really go by is the property appraiser's office.
City attorney, do you have some?
Do you
sort of-
see where
Yes, ma'am, I
Plantation
do have a
Boulevard
response.
ends?
Yeah,
And,
there's-
and we can talk about the map, but I can tell you where you can find the accurate information. And the property appraisers documentation, you know, that's for their own purposes. But as far as ownership of these roadways, it's this 10-page plat that we were just talking about. And if you turn to sheet 3 of that plat, and if you're looking for the sheet numbers, they're here in the upper right-hand corners. It'll say sheet 3 of 10.
Okay.
All right, so if you look here, it identifies this plat was it was compiled and designed based upon the community development district's ownership of the roadways, and that was all research at the time this plat was put together. So if you see here where you're looking and it identifies sheet 10 on sheet 3, it's the overview, and here in the upper left-hand corner of the diagram, it shows you sheet 10 addresses that part of the roadway. So then if you go to sheet 10, this drawing is the accurate representation of what the CDD owns
Okay,
with respect to plantation.
I don't see, I'm trying to think of the right word. I don't see where on sheet 10 does it show where Huntington National and the Woodland CDD, where that separation is. Can you help me find that?
On sheet 10 of the plat? Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's necessarily has to show that.
Yeah, it's not going to identify Huntington, but here when you look at on page 3, when you see the overview of what each sheet addresses,
Right?
you see the boundary of sheet 10 here. Everything that's within sheet 10 is owned by the CDD.
City Attorney, with all due respect, I take that as, that's how much would fit on the page. It's, because there's no, so then explain then why sheet 9 is broken up into 2 sections. Why is sheet 5 broken up into 2 sections? We know everything on sheet 5 is owned by the Woodland CDD. Just like everything on sheet 9 is owned by the Woodland CDD. So I need to have a better understanding based on what you're explaining.
So when you go to sheet 10, everything identified as tract A is owned by the Woodlands Community Development District. Now, I don't know how that translates into drafting a big map. That's something that the city manager and his staff can respond to for you. But I mean, there are literally,
Okay,
if you
I
look
get
here
it
on
now.
sheet
I get it
10
now.
in these
I get it now.
boxes.
So the map, this big map, it appears is still wrong then. Because if this is just going to sheet 10 for Woodlands only, then this blue section needs to be moved over.
It's possible, and they can talk to you about how they
Okay.
drafted that. But you will see there are coordinates here in these boxes, so
Okay.
they may have plugged those in.
Thank you very much for that. Because there is a section, a very small section, where sheet 10 ends closest to Toledo Blade, that is blank. So that is Huntington National. But this map has a very large area that I'm assuming is Huntington National because it's not blue.
if you look at this, it would go up and then this would go on top. and
Right,
flip like
exactly. But this,
Maybe we can get this clarified by the city staff, and then we'll move on to the question
well,
at hand.
it goes to the very next question.
Right, so let's get it clarified first, and then we can move on to the next question. City manager?
Oh, it's Julie Belia.
Juliana Belia, Public Works Director. The large map, which I gave everybody today, this is from the Planning Department. This is based on the platting. And as Ms. Slayton was explaining, where you see the two sheet 10s intersect, in all of my conversations with the Planning Department and the two owners, which is Chris Schmidt with Benderson, and also the representative Mark Vega of Woodlands, represented to CDD. They all are in agreement of what they own, and Huntington National Real Estate owns from Toledo Blade, just a little bit past where the curve ends right there. And the blue portion, all the way down past Panacea, south of that, is all the Woodlands, CDD. And if you look at the plat, you see where the two sheet 10s intersect. It kind of shows that. It's a little difficult to read on the plat, but this is what the Planning Department prepared. This is a document I received from them to accurately depict on the ownership. When I have had numerous discussions with both of them on their abatement mowing and the charges, right down to the acreage, they both are in full agreement. This is an accurate depiction of what they both own. So I'm just going by the information I've received from both Planning Department, Planning Division of Neighborhood Development Services, and also the two property owners.
And if you look at sheet 3, to the left is a sheet 10 box, and that sheet 10 box ends much closer to Toledo Blade than it does on this large map. And that's where I need to get some clarification and confirmation on, because something is not right.
The second sheet 10.
No, the first sheet.
The first sheet 10.
First
There's a
sheet 10
gap
is right
there.
here.
Yeah, there's a
sheet
gap.
10. This one, the closest one to Toledo Blade. Because that first sheet 10 comes up and goes over the curve, but that is what the city attorney is saying is the Woodland CDD.
Based on the information I have from Planning Department, and the two owners, that's what I've always been informed of. They've confirmed what Planning Division has given us to go by when we do the abatement mowing.
City attorney, do you see where my concern is, or do I need to come over?
I do, Commissioner McDowell, and maybe if we had the mapping experts in here. So when you're on the sheet 10, which is divided into two, so the bottom,
No,
the
I'm
bottom
on
sheet
sheet
10.
3.
I understand, but those give you the references back to the sheet 10.
I understand that, but.
So they then go in and plug in these coordinates here that are in the table, to tell you when this happens. And I'm not a mapping expert, so, we'd have to ask one of those people. But the last one I see here is C74, which ends here. So I'm not certain if this last part here on the right is part of Tract A or not.
If you look at sheet 10 then, and you start down at Panacea, and you go north, it has a little tiny curve to the left, and then a little tiny curve to the right. And then it runs out of room. So now you have to come down to the second segment of sheet 10. And it goes straight up, curves very dramatically to the left, goes straight, and then curves down back south, and then ends where, on sheet 3, sheet 10 is.
Commissioner McDowell, if I can ask, I think that this is a GIS issue within the survey of the DMK. The DMK, let me put it this way. When the property appraiser's office, the county, the state, they look at these plats, they actually look at the radius and the numbers, correct? It's more about the numbers. It's not so much of where these sheets 10 and so on and so forth.
That's why they give you the diagram
lie.
of the road.
Well,
And the diagram of the road,
well, let me get that answered real quickly. Do we know that? So that we know.
To be honest, Mayor, I'm not exactly sure how the property appraiser does that because it's pretty unusual to have a road platted the way that this one is. You know, this was a unique type of acceptance.
Right.
But yes, if you're asking, does the diagram on page 3 control or do these very, very detailed calculations of the coordinates and that type of thing control? It's the
controls.
latter.
Right. It's the
Right. It's not the
controlling
visual
factor.
depiction. It's the
Right.
calculations that
Thank
are
you.
depicted.
Okay. So, because as I understand it, and of course, I worked in New York in the department, it was always the controlling numbers up there. I'm not real sure about down here, though.
but the numbers are reflective. If you take sheet 10 and kind of turn it upside down like this, you can see it exactly in this curve.
I mean, I can say, Commissioner McDowell, you know, here in this part of the curve, it's even identified right here as track day. So, I mean, I understand your point, but I don't have the expertise to speak to it to the level of detail that you would like.
Right.
If I may, one thing we might want to check, and I can verify this with the Planning Division. It's possible it's part of, and I don't know this, another plat. Because many years ago, when they platted the entrance roadway to that commercial complex, it is possible that may be part of another plat, and that may be why it's not shown on this particular plat. That I don't know, we'd have to check. But I can tell you as far as ownership, and when you ask them to pay, and they're gonna base it on acreage and all that,
This is what they go.
I have confirmed with both property owners, this is exactly what they own.
And to follow, if I may follow up on that as well, the plat is an official document that's on file with the Circuit Court of Clerks property records, and it also controls with respect to ownership. So this is not something that was prepared
This
in-house.
is the
Right.
plat that
Yes,
was
ma'am.
submitted
Yes, ma'am.
with these street diagrams.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then, I'm sorry, I still go by something is wrong. I don't
Vice
know.
Mayor?
It can't be wrong with the plat. It's got to be wrong with this map that was provided, and I just need to get clarification on it. I'm going to go by the plat that I see.
Vice Mayor, do you have any insight? Because I know that this was a very lengthy conversation the last time.
Well, and the issue is that these maps are not necessarily 100%
Right.
to go by, and it's the plat to go by. And the plat, page 3 and page 10 match. So the entirety of that loop there, because I see exactly what you're talking about.
And I'm going by the property appraiser's office. It's
Well,
much closer to Toledo Blade than it is to
Yeah.
Panacea,
Right.
where that property line is.
So this is what was platted, and this is actually what we dealt with in the previous resolution as far as the right-of-way area and what was dedicated. So this map, I'm not even going by.
This is-
So
We were given to use to help us make.
I understand, yeah. But the plat itself is what
Is legal.
is legal, and it's what counts, and what the responsibilities of each of the parties is
But-
going by, right?
And
City attorney?
and maybe I should also say as well, I don't know that I don't see the CDD's attorney here tonight, but I did speak with him. He asked to see a copy of the resolution, and the resolution refers to the plat, even if it only had the 6 instead of the 10 pages.
Right.
He's very familiar with this document. He and I have been dealing with it for a long time, and it refers to the plat also by its instrument number, and there was no indication that there had been any transfer, of ownership or anything like that.
And the resolution doesn't in any way change the plat, and the plat hasn't been changed, having
That's
anything to do with this
why-
resolution, correct?
That's correct.
It's just attached as reference.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay.
Is there any other questions?
Yes.
A couple more.
Okay. Let's go back to Commissioner McDowell to go ahead and go.
The resolution is saying accepting for the plantation in its entirety. Are we really wanting to accept plantation all the way down till it comes back around to Toledo Blade and makes that loop? I thought we were only doing it from Panacea up to Toledo Blade. But the way I'm reading this, and help me again, City Attorney, is are we doing the entire length of plantation, because that's what I'm reading, or are we
Yes,
just
ma'am.
doing it from Panacea up?
You are exactly right. In reviewing the commission's action from the last, or from the applicable meeting regarding this, the commission ordered abatement of a certain stretch of plantation, but at least the motion regarding coming back with something about acceptance was broader. So the resolution as presented to you would accept the entirety of the maintenance on, landscaping maintenance on plantation, which would be everything shown here on the sheet 10s and the sheets 9, the two portions of sheet 10 and the two portions of sheet 9. Now, if the commission did not want to accept that in its entirety, I'd be more than happy to help you craft some language, to amend the resolution that way. But it is presented in a broader sense, and that way if you want to do something more narrow, we don't have a notice issue and you can still do it tonight.
Thank you very much. I may need your help on that. And you answered that question. So it goes to, why is the Huntington National invoice almost double what Woodlands is when Woodlands has more road based on this plat? So it goes back to the mapping question, and I know that you had said that you had talked to the owners of this property. I would hope that the owners of the property know where, on the plat map, where it is on the regular city map, where it starts and ends. And I'm curious, why is Huntington National so much more than Woodlands?
Because they have a greater amount of property. They're, according to this map, they own from Toledo Blade down past the curve, Huntington. And in the blue on the big map, from that bottom of that curve, south of that curve, to the intersection of Panacea, that is owned by Woodlands. And that's how we have been abating, and we've been charging them.
And they've paid.
And they've paid. Yes,
Huntington
ma'am.
National has paid?
Yep. They paid the first invoice. They have not paid the most recent. Just this afternoon, we did receive payment from Woodlands for their portion on the second abatement. Yes, ma'am.
See, I still have a problem with this plat and this map and what you're saying. I'm sorry, it's not matching, and if...
Well, we don't have an answer for that other than what's been given. So
But
do you
this
have
is what we're
another?
voting on.
But do you have another question?
No, I'm done with my questions at this point.
Okay. So, because we're obviously not going to get a plat answer. I mean, we know that this is the legal document that garners. This is what the city's been using. So that's
No,
an
it's-
internal conflict, and city manager will have to figure that out. Mayor Yates?
Yeah, if I can go to page 3 of the resolution, section 1.04.
Wait, is this the 2017 one, right?
Yeah, the 2017, the current one. And from what I understand, and this is going to be Plantation Boulevard shown on Track A. Track A is only, that is what's relevant to Woodlands CDD, correct? So it's not showing us anything of this other map where there's part of Plantation that goes this way. And it's not showing us anything close to Toledo Blade.
Yes, ma'am. 1.04 is a condition. If you look at the bottom of page 2, the language above that list of 4 items, it's related to the acceptance of the easement dedicated on this instrument, the plat. So it'd be the plantation as identified on that plat.
Okay, so in 1.04, the only thing that for clarity, the last sentence, maintenance of all landscaping within the right-of-way of Plantation Boulevard, shouldn't the words within the boundary of the Woodland CDD be added there? Because we're not doing areas that have nothing to do with this plot. Could we clarify by having that in there?
I think it's repetitive. If I could, and yes, you can put whatever you want in there. I mean, you know that. But let me show you, if you'll scroll back up with me to section 2.01. These 4 conditions, including the one you just identified, specifically relate to the acceptance of the easement that's dedicated to the city in this instrument. And those conditions are as follows. So it doesn't apply to anything outside of this instrument. I mean, certainly if you have some type of concern, you could modify that. I would suggest that if you did that, you would do it for both sentences in 1.04, unless, is this the entirety of Panacea on this plat? It's not. So, well, I would just say you'd want to be consistent. But I don't think it's necessary. I think it's covered by the language in 2.01, at least from a legal standpoint.
Right. The entirety of Panacea is on this track, though, isn't it? I believe it is. Yep.
It looks like there might just be a little smidge. Is that I don't think that's a legal term, but maybe a smidge near sheet 8.
And the reason that I was a little concerned with it is because in the previous resolution, it was very specific to identify in 1.04. Maintenance of all landscaping within the right-of-way of Plantation Boulevard within the boundary of Woodlands Community Development District shall be the responsibility of Woodlands. So the previous resolution had it very specific there, and now carrying it over into this one, I'm not sure why that.
With all due respect, when you look at the original resolution, the 2015 resolution, it had that language, maintenance of all landscaping within the right-of-way, within the boundary of the CDD shall be the responsibility. Then when the commission amended that in early 2017, inserted this first sentence, maintenance of all landscaping within the right-of-way of Panacea shall be the responsibility of the city. So the change that is in the draft before you is consistent with the last amendment that the commission made to the resolution. I mean, certainly if you want some clarifying language in there, that's completely fine. I would just say, just for the sake of being overly cautious, to, at least mirror it in both sentences of 1.04. If it's all inclusive, fine. On Panacea, if it's not, fine.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I just want to make sure that we're not, by language, omitting something, that we're not taking on anything, more than what's intended.
Well, we have an O&E report with respect to, from 2015, with respect to what's shown here on the plat that shows it's all owned by the Woodlands Community Development District. Now, I don't know if there's been any type of title search since then. I'm not aware of anything any real estate transfers that have taken place between the CDD and any other owners.
Okay.
But, if you want to include that language, put it in both sentences of 1.04, and then you have your extra protection, if that's what you want to do.
Okay. And the typos, I'm sure, is going to be fixed.
Well, I don't know where the typo is, or I would have fixed it.
The second whereas, final plat of Panacea and Plantation Boulevard. We didn't get to talk before
No, man, that's
this
not actually
meeting.
not a typo. And I appreciate, yes, I know, I always appreciate that you bring these, bring your concerns ahead in advance so we have time to address them. We did in a day. And if I were entitling the plat, I would also say Panacea and Plantation.
Right.
But if you look at the title of plat, there is no and.
So it has to match the plat.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay.
Anything else, Vice Mayor?
Nope.
Okay. Let me just ask, this is specifically to the taking over of the Plantation Boulevard, correct? Not the Panacea. or is it both?
The commission previously took action, as you recall, to take over
Or
Panacea.
Panacea?
And so what we did was to, in the same way, to amend all of the conditions. So if you look at 1.04, it has that language regarding Panacea, but that action was already taken. So the new action the commission would be taking in adopting this would be to include the the plantation.
Okay, let me try to reword it. We already took to action on the Panacea Boulevard.
Yes, ma'am, that's
Okay,
correct.
that is done, it's over with.
Yes, ma'am.
We take action on this, we are including Plantation Boulevard to our maintenance program, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This is a separate action. If we were to deny this, we still are going to take care of Panacea.
Yes, ma'am. If the commission were to not adopt this resolution, you still have the resolution in place that covers Panacea.
That's what I was trying to get at.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Oh, don't even have a light on. Okay. Commissioner McDowell.
I just have one quick question on section 2.01. It says via instrument number, and then it says 2016. Is that the plat? Is that what that instrument number is?
Yes, ma'am, it is. And if you look in the bottom right-hand corner and you have on, magnifying glasses, you can see there's an instrument number that's down there. When the clerk of court records these, they assign an instrument number that's unique to every document. So, this way, if it ever gets separated, anything like that, anyone can pull up this number and know exactly to what it relates.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing no other lights, can we go ahead and have a motion, please?
Do we have public comment?
We do not. I looked.
No public comment on
I
this?
know, I'm
Yeah, I
shocked.
thought we did, but no, you're good.
Wow.
I looked. Stroke.
I'll make a motion, I guess. Move to approve resolution number 2017-R-38.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay,
Madam
that
Mayor?
is moved by Vice Mayor, resolution number 2017-R-38, and seconded by Commissioner Hanks. Is there any comment to that? City Attorney.
Sorry. I just want to make sure that there was some reference on the record with respect to the motion regarding correcting the exhibit and attaching the document in its entirety.
Do we need an amendment?
Yeah, I'll withdraw. You want to withdraw?
Draw 'em a second.
I'll just restate it.
Hanks, okay, so that motion is withdrawn. Let's withdrawn.
Okay. And move to adopt resolution 2017-R-38 with the 10-page final plat as provided as attachment 1.
Second.
Okay, so that is moved by Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Hanks. Now, Vice Mayor Yates, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think this is just the final piece of kind of correcting something that has been going on for a long time.
Commissioner Hanks?
We hashed this thing out a long time ago.
Commissioner McDowell?
I would like to make an amendment to accept this only up to Panacea Boulevard. Anything south of Panacea Boulevard is still the responsibility of the CDD.
Do we have a second? Seeing no second, your motion fails. And I'm going to Commissioner Luke.
I'm for this because I believe it is correcting, what was in error in the past. But just to reiterate what I had a conversation with staff in regards to making sure when the contract with the service company is set forward that we're not duplicating work with our city employees.
Yes.
Okay, so just for the record, I'm not in support of this because I have been publicly known to say repeatedly, I was here when we did this originally. I know what the intent was. The intent was not to take over Plantation, and so I just can't support that. It's going to be another large amount of money to our city coffers to have to spend, and I just don't agree with that. Commissioner McDowell.
Yeah, I would very much like to support this resolution and this motion. However, the abatement areas that we have been doing is only up to Panacea Boulevard on Plantation. Anything south of there has been the CDD's responsibility. By doing this resolution this way, you're now saying to the CDD, hey, guess what? You don't have to do south of Panacea anymore. And we are going to be accepting that and the expense of that. I would be all for it if it was only the north of Panacea, but it's not based on the motion, so I will not be supportive of this. This is going to be twice the expense that was estimated in the backup materials and to the taxpayers.
Vice Mayor?
You might be asking the same question, but is this going to be twice the amount, or wasn't this included?
Juliana Belia, Public Works Director. We did not include south of Panacea in our calculation to have it mowed because that is through a residential neighborhood bounded by homes. And when you have development on either side of the roadway, they are supposed to cut the grass, not the city. This is a large undeveloped area that is north of Panacea Boulevard up to Toledo Blade Boulevard. So when we did our calculation for the mowing contractor, it's going to be hopefully presented before the commission in December, it was included, and actually we were just originally talking about that portion abutting Woodlands property, not even including Hunting National, because the Woodland CDD was the entity that came before the commission and asked for acceptance, not Huntington National. And as I recall, on the first abatement actions we went through, there was, we had asked if they would be interested in asking for city's acceptance. We did not get a response. And on the telephone last week, I phoned Mr. Christopher Schmidt, who is the representative for Benderson that represents Huntington National, and I offered him to come to the meeting today, and if he's interested, and ask the commission for acceptance, if he was interested. So I did put the offer out there.
Okay, but what you're saying now, I mean, with the questions that were asked before about whether or not this Track A was everything for the Woodland CDD, and the answer was yes. So now I'm hearing about Huntington National, but what does that have to do with this? In our direction for the mowing, for the additional mowing, we were directed by commission to abate between Toledo Blade and Panacea. Those are two property owners, but the entity that requested acceptance for the roadway was that portion of Plantation Boulevard which abutted the Woodland CDD property. And that is shown in blue on the big map. So for that, we have we've sought a price for a mowing contractor to mow that and keep that up. We did not, however, get any pricings for mowing maintenance between Toledo Blade and what's shown in white, the Huntington National property, simply because they have not requested commission acceptance for maintenance. So if it's that's not included in what we're adopting, that piece.
Oh, yes. Am I mistaken, City Attorney? I believe you're talking from Toledo Blade.
No.
On the plat is what they're saying, right?
No, she was in the resolutions. It's the whole thing. Correct?
It's what's on in the resolution. It's what's on the plat. And I know
Not
this is
the
small,
entire.
but it does not go
On
all the
page
way.
10?
Yeah, and you can see the overview on page 3. It does not go all the way to Toledo Blade. It's the motion from the last meeting was specific to the CDD portion
Woodland
of
CDD.
Plantation.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So
It's just the Woodlands portion.
But the
And that was different than what the commission decided to do for abatement. The two
That's
were
different.
worded separately.
Okay.
okay, I apologize. If the permanent mowing is for just Woodland CDD, that is what we have the quote for the mowing contractor to maintain.
That's what I wanted to clarify.
It's not south of Panacea, though.
Yes,
See now, our direction was to go between Toledo Blade and Panacea to abate.
Right.
And the portion of the Woodlands property to Panacea Boulevard was to be permanently mowed to get up for acceptance. The portion that's south of Panacea to the remainder of the Woodlands property, that's maintained by them now. The city's never maintained that. We've never abated it either.
Is that part of the public roadway?
Yes, ma'am.
That's
It's part of the
what I
public
thought.
roadway. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
It is the public roadway, and
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
everything that was required with the lighting and
Yes,
all of
ma'am.
that stuff.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
You done, Vice Mayor? Okay, Commissioner McDowell.
Clarification on the cost, the financial impact based on the legislative text. It says the abatement cost for the area in question, which is north of Panacea to Toledo Blade, is approximately $1,000 per month for labor and equipment. So you are not including the financial impact from Panacea down towards the Snover Waterway, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
So
You are
those-
correct.
So basically, you're going to be spending $2,000 to do the maintenance of this roadway.
Probably more.
Thank you.
It's a great distance of an area.
And for that reason alone is another one why I'm not going to approve this.
Commissioner Yates?
Yeah, and so I guess I'm taking it back to the original agreements and what was going on for years with everything having to be done from that start of that blue line up through Panacea, up through that portion prior to Toledo Blade. That is the roadway that was all in question. So just based on the fact of the alliances that were made, that the city was taking this over, is what I'm going by as far as getting this resolution done to complete what was promised.
Okay, so seeing no other lights, let's go ahead and call the question. The question is to approve resolution number 2017-R-38 with the amendments as stated by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Hanks, correct? I hope. And let's go ahead and vote. And that passes 3-2 with Commissioner Carasone and Commissioner McDowell dissenting for reasons stated in the comments. Thank you. Now we move on to general business 4A, which is the hiring of wildlife expert for the Spring Haven Drive Extension Project. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor.
Actually, nah, forget it. Let's go ahead. I was going to take a break because it's been 2 hours. I think this is going to be a longer conversation. Yeah, let's.
5 minutes.
No, we'll take 7 minutes. How about 7.5? No, 7 minutes. 7 minutes.
It's 6:15.
I know. I'm trying to hurry. I'm trying to get it done.
Good, how are you? Sure, good, how are you?
Possible to get a copy of that map?
Yeah. You want the big map?
The one that we're discussing. The one we're discussing. Excuse me.
You have that one?
Yes.
You want the big map?
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'll make it in mine. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, thank you.
I have to. No idea. All I know is that if you plan. I know what you're saying. Good. Okay, so this is where Panacea is? Yes. And it stops right there. But there's this section, so now we have to take this, that ends here. Go up and over.
I want to see what the hell all the fuzz was about. Because I thought they did. I understand the first meeting. I know where it's from. They showed me the point physically where it is. This is their property. This is what. Until we get some. All of
Mics are on.
Mics are on.
We are ready.
All right, we're moving on to general business 4A, hiring of a wildlife expert for the Springhaven Drive Extension Project. Before we get into the questions, I'd like to kind of take our public comment first, because this is kind of public driven. So let's go ahead and start with that. And I'm sorry, Commissioner McDowell, did you have something?
Yes.
You want a motion to reopen?
I would like a motion to reopen this Plantation Boulevard.
Which was item B, resolution number 2017-R-38.
Thank you.
So you would move to reopen resolution number 2017-R-38. I'll second that for discussion.
Okay, thank you, thank you, Mayor. I just want to make sure that everybody on the dais understands the expense that we're going to be incurring and what this area is, because I talked with staff during the break, and if you look where that blue area is from Panacea North, that little blue area, that cost almost...
Actually, we have to have the motion on.
Oh, I thought that's what it was.
That's all
we
right.
gotta
I'm
vote on that?
ditzing.
I apologize.
Yeah.
I apologize.
I'm blonde. What can I help you? So we had a motion and a second on the reopening.
To reconsider.
Thank you. Reconsider resolution number 2017-R-38. Is that correct, City Attorney? Can we not reconsider it?
I'm not sure. I'm not your parliamentarian for the meeting. That would be the city clerk. I just wanted to verify and make sure that you can, that a party who voted against the motion can properly lodge a motion to reconsider.
I think it's supposed to be somebody on the prevailing side.
Oh, this is okay. Thank you.
Even though it's just a resolution?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I didn't realize that because I voted no that I can't reopen it, restate. Okay, I'll withdraw.
Okay.
Unless.
All right.
Forget it.
I will withdraw. All right, so we will move on to item 4A. Sorry, Commissioner McDowell, I tried.
It's all right. You'll find out why I wanted to reopen it when we get the budget adjustment.
Well, when we do our commission comments, you can.
Okay, thank you for
that. Okay, so now we're on to the hiring of a wildlife expert, as I said before. And everybody still has their phones off, right? Just making sure. So I'm going to go ahead and call two of them, and then if you guys would just kind of line up. First one is Larry Reed. And then after that will be Linda Elliott. Did I say that right? I always feel like the G should be spelled silent. Mr. Reed.
My name is Laurie Reed, and I live at 2666 Berry Road. I'll try to make this short because I have sent all of you a fairly detailed email, which hopefully you've had a chance to review. I would only emphasize that what we're talking about is the last remaining remnant of a migration route that goes back many thousands of years. And we're also talking about something that materially, at least the culvert, if you don't do it right the first time, you're stuck. So I appreciate your serious consideration of that and the importance of getting accurate information or authoritative information in order to make an appropriate decision. Thank you.
Thank you. And Linda, you're next. And then after that will be Joanne Senlewin.
It's Joan.
Joan, sorry. Read that too quick. It's Linda first and then Joan.
She would prefer if I go first.
Okay. Doesn't matter. Somebody go.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Joan Heron Sanlewin. I live in Northport. I thank the Commission and City staff for their previous efforts regarding providing for a wildlife crossing. It now appears there are additional efforts needed to ensure the best possible outcome for all animals, endangered or not. I urge this Commission to hire an outside expert on wildlife crossings to provide input prior to amending any existing contracts. Per the agenda for the 1 p.m. meeting today, there is a proposed amendment for well over $400,000, and there is a proposed amendment that will take an additional 300+ days. With these new requirements from SwiftMud, perhaps the Commission should consider not extending Springhaven Drive. I understand a reason for the extension was the expectation of higher volume of traffic due to the recent improvements around the Morgan Center. Frankly, I do not concur that extending Springhaven Drive is going to improve traffic flow to the Morgan Center. Currently, Pan Am Boulevard dead ends at Springhaven Drive. Going west, a traveler accesses the Morgan Center by traveling west around the 90-acre preserve. The proposed extension will allow travelers going north on Pan Am to also go east, thus possibly saving seconds off their trip. I do not think a lot of people are going to use Pan Am to access the Morgan Center. I think the bulk of traffic will come from Sumter Price Boulevard. However, building developers may well benefit from this extension. I am concerned that a city staff member informed me that since there is no federal or state funding for the extension, the city did not need to meet federal and state requirements. I do not think that's accurate. The extension is going to affect tidal water, hence there must be a myriad of requirements. Has the city done its due diligence? So I urge the Commission to do that. Also, today, the Shark Brothers sent everybody an email, copied me, and you got a chance to read it. Because I really understand what, yeah. Okay, so they really support the design consultants. Some decisions like this one rise to the level of a decision impact beyond our collective time and its effect and influence on future generations. It is our hope that you deeply consider the word legacy as its definition as a thing handed down by a predecessor. So today we thoughtfully and earnestly urge you. So we really hope you do this. The city needs to maintain its green, environmentally sensitive reputation. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And you still have 14 seconds left. Good job.
Did you hear the one about?
Yeah. Ms. Linda, you're up.
I am going to refer to my phone. It won't make a sound. My name's Linda Elgott. I'm known by many people on the dais here and in the audience as a local resident for over 20 years and a wildlife biologist and regulatory expert. Please know that I support the retention and enhancement of wildlife habitat and native species protection in Northport. I speak today because I'm perceiving a lack of skilled and comprehensive understanding by all parties, and willing to lend my opinion and expertise on the record. Well-intentioned folks are in favor of wildlife protection, specifically and currently with respect to what is variously referred to as a wildlife crossing or corridor along Springhaven Drive. The city does not appear to have sufficiently knowledgeable in-house staff or any contracted expertise to evaluate this and other similar projects with respect to the environmental complexities and permitting. Simple solutions would include hiring the right in-house staff, hiring more in-house staff, executing a contract for professional environmental services on some sort of a contingency basis. Key issues are that environmental due diligence is not a voluntary exercise. Environmental assessments are necessary for balanced decision-making at all levels. And according to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Permits Office, their official records show as of 12/42 today, no federal work authorization has been issued for this project. Reference file number SAJ 2006-03580. The file was closed in 2008 for failure to respond to the agency reviewer's information request. The initiation of any non-permitted work would be a violation of the Clean Water Act and subject to administrative fines. I ask the board to ensure that the Springhaven Road project as prepared by any contractor and reviewed and permitted by all of the agencies, meets all of the required environmental protocols. And I thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, that is all the public comment we have. And do you have any questions? Commission, I have a question, actually.
Presentation or anything by the staff?
Well, just that, I thought this was initiated by the community, not really a staff initiative, but city manager?
I did have staff gather some information on this. This was initiated by the community as far as whether or not to hire a wildlife expert, but I asked staff to do some research into it so that you guys can make an informed decision one way or the other.
Okay. So can't we just, I mean, everybody read their backup, so.
There was no backup.
Yeah, they're just your legislative, that's it.
Well, you don't have a presentation, do you?
I have a PowerPoint presentation that we put together, and I sent out hard copies this morning.
Okay.
You're good.
This morning? Yes. Yes, ma'am.
And this
That was in response to Mayor Yates's questions, and the city manager asked that we kind of compile it for everyone so that we all have the same information.
No, I didn't read it.
Is that this
We
one?
got this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We had that on the dais.
Yes, ma'am. That was for the record, Juliana Belia, Public Works Director. Yeah, we had, myself and Mr. Ben Newman, the project engineer, we had met with Mayor Yates, and she had several questions, so we took down notes as to all those questions, and then I got with the city manager, and he suggested that we put together a report, possibly in the form of a PowerPoint, so that the whole commission would be aware of the questions and the answers. And in addition, he asked me to compile some additional information with respect to environmental consultants, as well as possibly some state agencies, federal agencies that may offer some of their environmental services for at no cost to the city.
Excellent.
So that's what we did.
Okay. So do we need to, I guess we need to go through this PowerPoint then, since none of us had the opportunity to actually look at it.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
If city manager doesn't mind.
No, I'd like to go through this because this dates back to the meeting we had earlier in the year where you directed us to look at making changes to the road, and this is also an update to that as well.
Okay.
The project funding, the design through amendment number 1 was $172,936,000. The design for the roadway spent to date is $102,257.10,000. Design for utilities spent to date is $13,840.50. Design balance through amendment number 1 is $56,838.40. The design for proposed amendment number 2 is $46,379. Construction phase budgeted amount is $5,480,685. This is a map of the Springhaven Drive extension area, and if you note there's a purple pink area, proposed wildlife crossing culvert. That is where we are proposing to utilize, with the increased stormwater requirements from SwiftMud pursuant to our environmental use permit. Since the project was originally started, that 4 foot high by 5 foot deep, is that correct? Box culvert would serve a dual purpose for not only the additional stormwater capacity, but also the wildlife crossing. And then, of course, we have some other landmarks on the map. In green, we show the city bought some property for the proposed pond for the roadway extension. And then, of course, to the north, we have the University of Miami and the project limits in green. This is the Springhaven Drive extension currently. It is a map of that area. And also the Springhaven Drive extension proposed. Some of the existing conditions: the University of Miami, Little Salt Springs site, and Sarasota County School District own undeveloped tracts of land on the northwest side of Springhaven Drive. The Villas of Charleston Park residential development with privacy walls bordering Springhaven Drive is located on the southeast side of Springhaven Drive. The city of Northport owns the retention ditch I just showed you, along with an 80-foot wide retention ditch platted with single-family lots, which is the pond area, and Butler Park. Wildlife access to the Macatee Creek is restricted by the developed properties of the villas of Charleston Park and Butler Park. When the missing segment of Springhaven Drive and Pan American Boulevard and Price Boulevard is constructed, access to wildlife will be further challenged. On May the 4th of this year, the Friends of the Little Salt Springs presented to the City Commission their concerns about the impact of the Springhaven Drive extension will have on the wildlife in this area. Sean and Brooks Paxton, the Shark brothers, utilized motion detection cameras positioned in the area of the Sarasota School District property at the Springhaven Drive right-of-way to document the activity of wildlife, including white-tailed deer, bobcats, wild turkey, armadillos, raccoons, and squirrels. Staff identified several challenges, in particular the absence of environmental conservation of existing undeveloped land on both sides of the Springhaven Drive right-of-way. City Commission consensus from the meeting directed staff to bring back options concerning the wildlife crossing. This is an example of Panacea Boulevard. We have what's called grade-separated crossings, which there are actually 6 of the wildlife crossings consisting of 3-foot by 4-foot reinforced concrete box culverts. The next slide actually shows you some examples of an at-grade crossing versus a grade separated. The engineer of record does not have expertise on staff regarding wildlife crossings. Staff investigated 2 alternatives: at grade, which is of course the top right-hand picture, and grade separated crossings were developed and associated construction costs were estimated. The bottom picture shows you a grade separated where you actually have an access for the wildlife under the roadway. The construction cost of the grade separated crossing is typically more expensive than the at-grade alternative, but less in maintenance costs. To satisfy the environmental resource permit modification, the Southwest Florida Water Management District required additional stormwater conveyance under Springhaven Drive that I alluded to earlier. The engineer of record primarily sized the areas for stormwater flow needed under Springhaven Drive, comparable to a 4-foot by 5-foot reinforced concrete box culvert. The reinforced concrete box culvert presented an opportunity to serve a dual purpose for both stormwater, drainage, and wildlife. Staff met with the Friends of the Little Salt Springs on July the 21st of this year to discuss alternatives to accommodate wildlife through the Springhaven Drive Extension Project. Staff and Friends of the Little Salt Springs met again October the 31st, 2017, to discuss the details of the proposed wildlife crossing under Springhaven Drive. The Friends of the Little Salt Springs suggested the city utilize a wildlife expert for Springhaven Drive Extension Project. So what we did is last week we did some research with respect to some potential environmental consultants. We made contact with Earth Balance, Environmental Consulting and Technology, Stantec, WRA Engineering. And I would like to mention, when I did speak to the gentleman at Environmental Consulting and Technology, he said he would offer his services at no cost, provided he could get a little bit of assistance from Florida Game and Freshwater Commission, maybe a representative from that agency, as well as FDOT to help him. And what his suggestion was, to make it more economical for the city, is they would do the study, provide their recommendations, and then our current consulting engineer on the project, Charlotte Engineering, would incorporate the changes on the plans. So we'd have cost savings there. So that's just a little bit of a side note. I thought that was a very nice offer on his part.
Which one was that?
That was Environmental Consulting and Technology.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Then we also contacted Stantec and WRA Engineering. Actually, Stantec and WRA Engineering were provided from the Friends of the Little Salt Springs. Some of the pros for getting an environmental consultant, as opposed to, for example, having an outside agency at no cost, would be managed schedule and completion of the study, broader selection of experts, credibility, and experience on similar projects. Some of the cons to hiring an environmental consultant would be an additional cost for the study, time for procurement procedures, change orders may be required, and time to prepare plans and specifications. We also contacted environmental agencies, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, Florida Department of Transportation, and Southwest Florida Regional Planning Council. Some of the pros to hiring an utilizing the services of environmental agency would be no additional cost for the study, limited selection of experts, credibility, more budget conscious, experience on similar projects, ability to incorporate protective measures on project plans and associated costs. The cons is unable to manage schedule and completion of the study, and availability. That concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Okay, can we get the screen up there? Do we have any questions, folks? Commissioner McDowell.
I know when we talked about this proposed wildlife crossing a few months ago, we also talked about the pond. The proposed pond along the creek is a wet pond. And if it's going to be a wildlife crossing, how do they get through the wet pond to get to the wildlife crossing, especially if that area becomes developed? Because we don't own anything outside of the pond.
If I may to defer to Mr. Ben Newman, the project engineer.
Yes, amendment number 1 to Charlotte Engineering and Surveying's agreement for design of the project was to modify the existing environmental resource permit to change the stormwater treatment pond from a wet retention to a dry retention pond. So it will in fact be a dry retention pond and only wet a short period of time after a rain event.
Okay, so dry retention pond, help the citizens understand what exactly is the difference. A wet pond is wet 365 days a year?
Correct.
And a dry pond is dry?
It is wet approximately 72 hours or less after a rain event.
72 hours or less?
Yes.
Where else do we have a dry retention pond for my visualizations?
All along Sumter Boulevard.
Oh, that's a lot more than 72 hours.
Yeah, well, portions of it are having some operational problems, but by and large, the ponds are dry, yes, within 72 hours of a rain event.
So this pond, is it going to be fenced?
No, it is not.
So the little platted lots between the creek, the pond, and this proposed roadway, what happens when those all get developed? What, the wildlife corridor ceases to be necessary?
Well, you raise a very good point. There is no conservation or no environmental conservation easement over that land or the school district property on the other side of Springhaven Boulevard, or Springhaven Drive. So when they get developed, that will more severely restrict wildlife passage through these areas that are now undeveloped. There will still be the 80-foot wide drainage easement that we have on the south side.
You're not going to be able to get to it, because if it's going to be developed,
on the north side of the school district property, yes.
Carrollville Avenue, hang a left.
Tell that to the deer. It's.
Yes, that's the big stumbling block or challenge that we see is the undeveloped land there now on both sides is tentative. It's not
within our control.
It's not permanent, yes.
Right.
That's where one of the biggest issues comes is.
I'm bringing this up because this is part of the bigger discussion. So, as it is right now, with those platted lots not being developed, and we put in this dry pond for 72 hours, it's dry, they can cross over the dry pond into the platted lots that are undeveloped currently and use that green space? What are you calling that green space?
Drainage easement.
Drainage easement,
It's a
okay.
it's a retention ditch.
Okay,
Yes,
so,
ma'am.
so
80
the
foot.
retention ditch, let's talk about that. How much water is in that retention ditch? I mean, are the wildlife going to use it?
Part of the additional design work would be to survey the retention ditch and then develop construction plans that would require regrading of that R ditch or drainage ditch to maintain positive flow to a downstream culvert pipe. And in that respect, again, after a short period of time after a rain event, when that ditch has had the chance to dry out, then it would be available for use by wildlife.
Is that ditch dry now?
No. That's
When
why
does
we
that
would need
ditch
to
get dry?
survey it and regrade it to make sure we have positive flow from the box culvert under Springhaven Drive to the downstream culvert pipe.
Is it possible to put one of those underground ditches with the piping so that there's just flat land above it and the water drainage is underneath in the piping? I don't know, I'm not an expert, I don't know what to call this, I'm trying to.
You mean pipe the retention ditch?
Correct.
That's a possibility. I don't think there would be any adverse environmental impacts to that unless I don't think we would have to provide any additional stormwater treatment for that.
Because if that ditch is still wet now, and does the wildlife use it?
It would be very expensive.
Very expensive. It's
To
80
pipe
feet
that
wide is
drainage
big.
flow, yes.
Of that 80 feet ditch, how much is filled with the water and how much is like a shoulder where?
Until we have it surveyed, we're not real sure what the existing contour profile is. But you're right now it's hard to see because it's so overgrown.
Yeah, and believe me, I want to have our wildlife have safe crossing, but I want this safe crossing to be forever, but we have development here, we have a drainage ditch that we have to get the wildlife to use once that development happens, and how do you tell a wild animal, walk this way?
Put signs up and they follow them.
I mean,
Did I say that? Sorry.
And then I get to the wildlife crossing itself, is it going to have fencing along it, and or is this why we would need to hire a consultant?
That's one of the reasons we would want a consultant would tell us, or a wildlife expert would tell us what they feel is needed.
Those were some of the questions that were brought up is when I had the meeting, Little Swell Springs met out at Public Works on Halloween, I believe that was. Some of the questions that were brought up then were about the fencing, and my understanding is even among their own board, there was conflicting opinions of do you put fencing up or not, because it can create a, excuse me if I don't use the right term, a area where you're causing the animals to become subject to predators if you trap them.
Right.
So I mean, that's the reason for the wildlife expert is the group themselves had differing opinions: fence, no fence, culvert, what size, all these options.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the culvert. So this culvert is to help drain the water off the Little Salt Springs property into this retention ditch, which is wet more times than it's dry. How do you keep that culvert, if the wildlife are supposed to use it, dry so they can use it?
Well, here again, that would be the purpose, to survey the existing R ditch from Springhaven Drive towards Myakkahatchee Creek, and then to develop construction plans to regrade it so we have positive flow from the box culvert under Springhaven Drive to the downstream culvert pipe. So then after a period, or from a period after a rain event, the ditch would dry out because it has positive flow and then be usable for wildlife.
Commissioner McNown, not to interrupt you by any means, but I think we're straying way far away from what our agenda item is. We're not here to we are here to talk about an environmental specialist who would then come back with all of this probably changed. See? So if we sit here and debate this for an hour and a half and then turn around and hire someone or ask someone to come back here and get a different plan and debate that another 2 hours. See what I'm saying? This is not, it's a little premature to kind of have this conversation without knowing what the professional
since we were in the
says.
question part of it,
Yeah.
I couldn't explain why I was asking these questions, which
Gotcha.
is the next part of once we get a motion. So,
Okay.
I'll yield the floor because I know time is starting to slip away, but these questions are relative to hiring a wildlife consultant. So,
Okay.
go ahead.
Commissioner Luke?
Yeah, I believe they were some relevant questions in regards to this too. I know I was one of them who really, really wanted to see this corridor, this connection between the Myakkahatchee Creek and Little Salt Spring. And I know there are some private ownership and potential development along that corridor. We discussed about having this wildlife tunnel or whatever it's called for the crossing in conjunction with thinking that there could be potentially this corridor that links, actually it's the last remaining section that could ever link these two environmental entities together. Has anybody tried to contact these other entities, these property owners? I mean, has there been anything returned to see if we're even chasing something that's unobtainable?
Commissioner Luke, I can tell you that the Friends of the Wildlife have done extensive research in trying to contact those property owners and work something out. And I don't know if the city has, but I know they're aware of what, city manager?
As far as the school board property, this was literally just discussed at COG last week, and they currently don't have any plans for that property. It is part of their, they're not sure if it's going to be a land bank or ever going to be used at all, but they're not opposed to the possibility of a land swap. So that's obviously the biggest chunk that's right next to Little Salt Springs. As far as the platted lots, I don't know that we've contacted them to see if they'll choose not to ever develop that land.
Is staff aware of whether or the Friends of Little Salt Spring or the Archaeological Society have heard back? Because last in the meetings I've attended, they had no contact with these people.
I don't know if Little Salt Springs has contacted them. I mean, they're Friends of Little Salt Springs. They may be able to answer that question. I can't comment on what another agency has or hasn't done.
We actually have people here from organization that did contact them. If you want Edie or Larry Mr. Larry. You have to come up and state your name for the record. Sorry, Edie.
Edie, Patrice. Conservation Foundation of the Gulf Coast reached out to those people in hopes that they would consider selling something like that, and they did not answer. That's where it's left.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then furthering with my questions, you stated that the environmental entity said that they would freely consult for us?
Yes, ma'am. The environmental technology consultant, Mr. Dana West, when I talked to him on Friday, he said that he would be willing to offer his services for no charge, provided he could have be able to have assistance from FDOT representative and FWC. And he would, the three of them would work together to provide a list of recommendations, and we would give those to our consulting engineer already on staff for the project, or excuse me, already under contract for the project, and that way that would help save us some money.
Most definitely, you can't beat free expert. Then a couple of other questions. That ditch that they were discussing, the 80-foot ditch, where does it flow to? I mean, what's its use right now?
It flows downstream towards Myakkahatchee Creek, crosses under several roadways in the section of the Jockey Club, I think it is, back in there, and then eventually gets to the creek. There's not a direct connection between the R Ditch and Myakkahatchee Creek, except through those culvert pipes under those roads in the Jockey Club.
So there is not a connection to this ditch right here that's showing on this page to that short distance of going into the Myakkahatchee Creek?
Correct.
Okay. Would you have to prepare that ditch anyhow with this piping that's being talked about by Swift Mud? And that was not me.
Well,
that would be evaluated by the consulting engineer, but at this time, no.
Are we still
Yeah, I was
recording?
going to say, Assistant Deputy Clerk, are we still recording? Is everything copacetic with that little power outage? Okay.
Thank you.
Just want to make sure. Okay.
So the only reason that you would, because I thought putting in this culvert could be dual, that you were going to have to put in piping and ditch work or drainage work anyhow, and it could be utilized also for the crossing of the wildlife.
if you look at the map where we have it in purple, that is the actual box culvert.
Right.
That would go under the roadway. Then if you go south of that, that's the 80-foot wide retention ditch, the R ditch.
Right.
We generally do not pipe our R ditches because they're first of all, most of them are very wide, and most generally speaking, we'll do some full front piping in front of houses, different places like that. But to do a full front on a retention ditch, it's very expensive, but the intention when you have an open swell drainage system is just that. It's to provide, treatment of pollutants and things like that and to carry the water. So Swift Mud kind of looks more favorably when you have an open swell drainage to keep it that way. They're not exactly even excited about when we do full fronting or allow it in front of homes. They do allow it, but on something like this, we'd have to go back through the whole permitting and go to the expense of a very large pipe or maybe a couple runs of pipe.
Okay, so without the wildlife corridor, would you be installing this box culvert?
Yes, ma'am.
You still would?
Yes, ma'am. We
Okay.
need to install it to accommodate our additional stormwater conveyance requirements of Swift Mud since we originally had the project initiated.
But it doesn't have to be piped, it's going to be open.
Yes, ma'am. The actual
Okay.
R ditch. Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice Mayor.
I'll stick with the R ditch, but as far as doing the box culvert and for whatever stormwater purposes, that still has to be dredged to make sure the proper slope, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so there's still that expense that's going to be.
As Mr. Newman mentioned earlier, that R ditch is severely overgrown. We need to be maintaining it anyway, my department, but we'll also go in and regrade it according to the proper elevation, especially in light of the fact we have to make sure it accommodates the drainage for the roadway.
And that's aside from any wildlife.
Aside from any wildlife
corridor.
corridor, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I had asked about the other wildlife crossing that we had, and you show in here the Panacea one.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And was asking about, do we know how it's worked since that was put in? What's going on there? Is it serving the purpose that?
We know of no monitoring taking place to see how functional it is.
Okay.
We have no idea either of the design parameters, how they were located along Panacea Boulevard or how it was sized.
Okay. And these experts that you had contacted that are available resources at no cost to the city, do they have like tested situations? Have you inquired about that? About,
Yes, ma'am.
when these culverts are put in, how well it's worked, what hasn't? Have you
Yes,
gotten
ma'am.
feedback from them?
There was actually a couple of studies, for example. Actually, when I spoke to, I know Mr. Newman did also, but apparently FDOT does these quite routinely, and they do actually, they'll call them a paper, or it's an actual study, especially along the high-speed roadways. But they're usually very successful, what they design for. FWC also has done some, and they'll use the video monitoring cameras to check, similar to what the Shark Brothers did out there at Spring Haven. They did a little test case. They do that routinely to make sure what they design actually works.
Okay. And the one consultant you were talking about, if we can utilize that company, they would have access to those resources for FWC to be sharing as far as those.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Newman has contacted the FDOT representative, and he's awaiting a call back to get confirmation if they'd be willing to assist us. But the lady I spoke with at FWC, she said it would be her supervisor, and on Friday she was going to check with him. She asked that I send her a copy of the plan of the roadway to kind of show what they'd be working on. But she seemed very interested, and she said she thought we could work something out, they could assist us.
Okay. And the FDOT, was that the District 5, or did we have one here in the District 1?
We have a representative in District 1 that Mr. Newman contacted. We haven't heard back yet, though.
Okay.
But they do have the professional expertise to do that.
Right. The project funding, thank you for getting that.
You're welcome.
This is a project that started at $3 million, I think, somewhere around that, and it's just really escalated for one reason or another, primarily now stormwater issues, and we're not even done yet.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we still have that dredging, and we have a lot of consideration for that. And this is only a half a mile of a roadway?
Yes, well, yeah, about 2/3 of a mile.
2/3 of a mile.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, part of the I guess, trepidation with trying to arrive at a construction cost estimate is trying to catch up with the economy. Sometimes it's changed very fast. Of recent, the prices have gone up extraordinarily, and just trying to make sure we have sufficient money budgeted to account for the escalation.
And the longer things take,
The more it goes up.
the more it goes up.
Yes, ma'am.
And, and that's kind of what I'm assessing and looking at here is, at what point does the value of whatever it's going to do traffic-wise, infrastructure-wise, make sense to the fiscal impacts to where those funds maybe could be utilized to have more of a impact on whatever transportation solutions we're looking for. So that's what I'm saying. It's
The balance.
we're over $5.5 million now without other considerations. The as far as those properties and looking at the curve goes the wrong way. It's going away from Myakkahatchee Creek versus some way to directly connect. The right up against our canal or ditch.
Yard ditch.
Right. If the city were to acquire those properties, the green, light green shaded there, is that the dry pond you're talking about, the light green?
Yes, ma'am. The light
Okay.
shaded green area.
Okay.
That's the lots we've already acquired.
Okay. And is there a plan, or was there a plan to acquire the properties, maybe 4 that are abutting that, to connect it to that ditch?
No.
No, there's no plan.
All right, and I'll let somebody go. I had another note here.
Commissioner Hanks?
Yeah, some of mine was kind of along the same way. I had 2 plots of land across front from my house went up for sale about 2 weeks ago. Within the very next day, it was sale pending. I mean, that's kind of the way it's going. So the way I look at this culvert is a moot point if these houses build. You know, all that's going to be good for the next year and a half or 2 years or 3 years. Then all this is going to build. And that's not even going to be useful because, again, they'll have to go down to Caryville Avenue. They'll have to hang a left, hopefully at a light or at a crosswalk where they're able to get through, you know. But it's just not even going to be feasible. So part of my thing was along the lines with the vice mayor is we need to probably look at something like this. And I don't know, you know, if an owner is not contacting you and city attorney or city manager, maybe you can help me out. Is there ever a scenario where eminent domain works for wildlife, like to preserve? I mean, maybe not.
Well, that's an interesting research question.
Well, I want to answer now.
Do an overlay, the environmental overlay, and then even then they can consider it a taking of their rights. So we'd have to pay them.
We have to pay them.
Yeah, if you eminent domain, you have to pay.
Well, yeah. But I mean, you pay what, market value?
No.
No?
No. Oh, market value.
Yeah, market value. So that's what I'm saying. The longer we wait, the worse this gets.
Yeah.
You know, if you're looking at something and you're to do something, if it was feasible, if you can't contact, I mean, obviously you don't want to just take someone's land if they're willing to sell. But if they're not contacting you, you know, I would wonder if that was something that we can look at, because all this is really moot. If all these homes build up, you know, it doesn't really matter. Or, I mean, it just, you know, we're just spinning our wheels.
Well, we're spinning our wheels because we're discussing the same exact thing we've already talked about twice.
However, that being said, it also
yeah.
goes in with hiring the environmentalist, because if
Exactly.
all this builds up, well then.
But it's not, and I guess the question I have is it a hire? If we have someone who will do this for free, and I look at the pros and the cons, and I see that the cons are an additional cost for a study. Well, it's going to be free, right? Okay. The con is time for procurement and procedures. Well, if it's free, you don't have to procure it, right? Okay. The other con is change orders may be required. Well, that's a con, and it's a possibility. But time to prepare plans and specifications, if there's a change order, yeah. So the cons are split in half, as far as I'm concerned. We're talking about really the only con is adding more time if we get this freebie, which is what, a few months, as opposed to the decade it's taken me to see this thing complete. Because I am thoroughly convinced this will not be completed by the time I'm dead. So,
Well, hopefully you don't have plans for
well,
that
you're
anytime
going right
soon.
after me, buddy. So,
But too stubborn to go anytime soon. But just on that note, you know, yes, the cons are pretty uneventful
Right.
for doing the free option.
right.
One pro that I would say that's not listed here on doing the free option is it does give us the time to see with those platted lots, because the school board property is one thing. They do not have anything in their, I believe, certainly in their 5-year, but it looks like even in the next 20 years to do anything with that property, which gives us time to negotiate with them on whether we could do anything. To me, the urgency on property-wise is those platted lots that are right there. So while we're doing the wildlife study, if that's the direction the commission goes, gives staff time to research the possibility of somehow acquiring those lots. Well, maybe they'd be nice enough to donate them.
Right.
Obviously, there's multiple options, but you know, that's so. Even if the study took a little longer, that does buy us more time to come up with options, including grant opportunities for ways to acquire that property.
I guess I'm trying to gear us back towards the conversation at hand here, is that, so when we look at this environmental consultant, by doing a free resource of some sort, and I think there's more than just the environmental technology coordinator, there's also Mayaca Division of Forestry,
These are just the ones we had time to check.
right, a slew of people who will do it for free. We're really only talking about additional time. And then that study will come back before us, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then this will probably be all different, most likely. And then we will have to make that decision and go through all this communication once again and talk about, but hopefully by that time, we'll have some sort of direction on what we can do to acquire those pieces of property that are an issue for us, and it can all come together.
And ultimately,
right?
the word hire in that agenda item was really, do you want us to retain
Right.
somehow?
Right, retain. Okay.
So hire was a bad choice of words on my part. I'll take that one. That
Well, it's about time you took something. All right. Commissioner McDowell?
Two follow-up questions. There's a Silver roadway, and looking at the property appraiser's office, that road does not exist. Who is responsible for constructing that road?
you talking about the one inside the platted lots that's
The one that's,
looks like a big D with extended
yeah,
lines?
yeah.
That's not there yet. That's why it's not on the property.
I'm asking who is responsible for constructing that road, because it's my understanding this is in either Charleston Park or in Jockey Club or something. I'm curious who is responsible for building that road.
I don't believe it's the city. I believe it would be whoever would be developing that land.
I got this messed up when I was talking to them the last time, because
And that would include, excuse me, that would include the straight piece, which is the extension of Vestridge, along with the cul-de-sac gray piece around those lots.
So that's, that
There's
would
two
be a
pieces.
private road, once
Oh,
they build
that's-
it?
Okay, that is.
Vestridge is a platted
That's the Jockey Club.
Well, Vestridge is a platted public right-of-way. It's just not there yet.
and the other one maybe.
Caravel is Jockey Club.
I would say probably is.
Oh, I see it now. I see what you're talking about.
Can you,
I'm sorry.
you see where the R ditch is?
Yes, ma'am.
And you see where the Morgan Center is? The property line for the Morgan Center?
Yeah, that's Jockey.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, in green.
That, between the R ditch and the property line for the Morgan Center, is that Jockey Club or is that Charleston Park?
That is Jockey Club.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So Jockey Club is going to, Jockey Club, or whoever the developer is going to have to build that road, and then that is a private road, correct?
That's a really good question, because there
That-
is no more developer of the Jockey Club.
These aren't private.
Here again, this is a situation, I'd have to go back to research, similar to how I did with Springhaven. And as when Mr. Newman and I met with the mayor, Springhaven was actually a commitment of General Development Corporation years ago. Of course, they went out of business. So the city got that responsibility. I
Now
don't
you
know.
While I'll be dead.
I don't know, I'd have to research this as to who would be responsible, because I'm sure it was probably original Jockey Club developer was General Development Corporation, to see how those, the legal documentation panned out as to, do the owners of those lots or developer of those lots have to build the road before they can develop those lots? Because they look like platted lots. They're platted on the map here.
Right.
And then ultimately, it would depend whether or not the road was turned over to the city, as far as whether it remained a private road or was turned over to the city. And like the ones that you're looking at, they're inside Charleston Park. It's kind of, it's a gated community, so they stay theirs. But if this became a public road, as we all know from 30 minutes ago, certain roads get turned over to the city and become public roads, as well as all of their right-of-way and everything. So
All right, so we got the roads answered now. I know at the last time when we had this discussion, we had also talked about where that property line is for Morgan Center. Why can we not make that property line extend and make the corridor, the wildlife corridor up there as opposed to at the R ditch?
Because of the pool project?
No, the pool project is way over
Oh,
here.
okay. I'm just talking out loud,
Yeah.
really.
That's what they said the last time. The pool project is way over here. They still have to have this dry pond for the road itself. So why can we not move the culvert instead of over at the R ditch over to where the property line is, where the Morgan Center is?
But see, this is why I'm trying to, the environmentalist and the study would answer that question. That's why I'm trying to hone this in. Those questions will be revealed at a later date.
Well, if they're asked
If they're asked.
Yeah, if they're asked.
Because if we're gonna
That's
focus
the
on
whole
this,
point.
if we're
Well,
gonna
no, we're
focus
focusing-
on our ditch, then they're not gonna discuss
Yes, but
that.
the whole point was to focus right where it shows.
Doesn't mean you can't have.
So now if we open that up,
I think that, and maybe I'm wrong, that the study would include the entire Spring Haven, and they would say, this is the way you should go, this is the way you should go. I mean, they're not going to necessarily look at only that box that we're talking about. They're going to look at the entire corridor, right?
Yes, ma'am. But to start with just the drainage and focus just on the drainage, we are going to need that box culvert to accommodate the stormwater drainage. So if, hydraulically.
Right where it's
So
at.
if the consultant says, it's a great idea, you can use it as a dual purpose. If the consultant says, I think you'd be better off putting a pipe in to facilitate a wildlife crossing by the Morgan Center property, we're still gonna keep that other pipe for drainage, hydraulically, to accommodate the drainage.
Because if I was a wildlife critter, it would make sense. And once this all gets developed, the ultimate goal is once this property gets developed, we still have a wildlife corridor.
Yes,
Once
ma'am.
this property gets
Right.
developed, if we don't have a wildlife corridor, why are we even talking about this?
Yes, ma'am. You're right.
So the ultimate goal in my mind is to make sure that 10 years from now, when we're all
nothing can get
dead,
in the way.
nothing's going to get in the way of this wildlife corridor. So I would hope if we give the direction to hire a consultant, that the Morgan Center area is also discussed and looked upon.
Retain.
Hire,
Retain.
ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Luke.
I mean, as far as just settling this about the consultant, I'm ready to make a motion to retain the environmental consulting.
Just support so that we don't cut Commissioner Yates off because she does have her light on. Do you have a specific question to the consultant?
We don't have one yet. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I have comments after that,
But
but,
we'll see what the motion
Okay.
is. I might
All
add
right.
to it.
Go ahead, Commissioner Luke.
okay, I move that we retain environmental consulting and technology with any of the other free services that could be obtained in order to do a study on the wildlife. She's making this motion to me. Oh, okay. The wildlife corridor.
So the motion is to go forward with retaining any of those free services for the wildlife.
Definitely the environmental consulting and technology, because they offered free service, but
Right.
they also wanted the assistance of some others. So whoever we could get to help free, in their study, in their work, to retain them.
Okay.
Retain the one and let the other.
So
get his free
Commissioner, are we
business.
clear on that, to retain the environmental tech as well as any other
Free services.
nervous service,
resources available.
anything, to go ahead with the project to get this environmental consultant? Is everybody clear on that? Do we have a second for that?
I'll second it.
Okay, so Commissioner Luke, do you have anything towards that motion?
No.
Commissioner McDowell?
And when this environmental consultant comes back with their findings, we will be consulted and advised?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Yates? Vice Mayor.
Yeah.
Mayor. We are never going to get this right.
Yeah, no, I think that, we have to look at this holistically. We really do. And it's best for us to do what we have to do. And there's a lot of resources out there we could reach out to. So I'm good. And then there's other stuff, and I'll keep it separate.
Good.
It'd be a lot cleaner.
Thank you. Okay. So without seeing any other lights, can we go ahead and vote on that? Awesome. That's unanimous. All right. Mayor Yates, or Vice Mayor Yates?
Yep.
There,
Okay. Was there something else?
Yeah,
Oh.
there was something else that I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
I have passed this on to city manager, and it's something that I think we need to grasp, or we need to do something here in Northport. I attended only one of the board meetings of Sarasota County EDC, and then I attended one of their executive board meetings.
Does this have to do with Springhaven?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
And within this, I am finding that this incentive fund that has been being brought up funds another fund, and it was brought up at one of our last meetings. It's a community restoration fund. There's to my knowledge, what they told me, 1.6 million sitting in this fund, and it is to be used by communities for infrastructure that may lead to economic development. Now, of course, Warm Mineral Springs comes to my mind because that's definitely an economic driver, and I brought it up in the executive board, and they were like, oh, definitely, that fits. But the Spring Haven came to my mind too, because this is connecting, going to that water, our aquatic center, which a lot of people do attribute, economic development toward that. So I think it's something that if we got a plan together, we could actually take to Sarasota County EDC and present it to them, and hopefully collect some of that 1.6 toward this project also, as well as, when we get to Warm Mineral Springs. They need us. I mean, this incentive fund is under attack, but it feeds this other fund that we're going to be able to draw from. And so they need to prove that these funds can be utilized for the future. And so we're providing to them a reason to keep this intact, and it helps our city. So that's why it's connected to Spring Haven.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I'm not sure. How long has the city owned these lots that are being used for the dry? Is that fairly recent?
Quite some time, I think.
It's been a while.
I think it's been since 2006 when the original design was in progress.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 50s, but it was back when we
Yeah,
were doing the
2006,
Myakkahatchee
2007.
corridor
Yep.
and stuff, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And is any of this part of the acquisitions that we're looking to do on the Myakkahatchee Creek? Is it part of the funding?
Tier 2.
Yeah, exactly, the Tier
Yes.
2.
No.
Second lots in should have been part of Tier 2, but
That's what I thought.
don't think they were
told us. I don't think so.
over here.
I don't believe so.
Don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'd have to research that.
That's a while ago.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Obviously, my memory is not that good, so it's probably
All
not
right.
good to rely on it.
Well, I think that we should contact the property owners, as the city manager was saying. We can concurrently, basically, look at acquiring those. So let me just make a motion
Can we
to,
not just talk about contacting the property owners? Can we come back with options, all sorts of ways to acquire that? Not limit ourselves to contacting? Because we would prefer to contact them and
Right.
purchase, but if there are other resources.
Yep.
Kavish?
yeah, I had researched the opportunities for, I gotcha.
Yeah.
She had some.
Commissioner McDowell?
Just want to piggyback off that. We've given direction for city attorney and staff to research eminent domain and how it can be utilized and everything surrounding that. And we're still waiting for it, so maybe that's part of the other part of the conversation.
To do eminent domain for what?
Yeah, we have a special meeting that's supposed to come up
in
and
a discussion about eminent domain. And
more like a general education on what can we do, what we can't do, what does it mean financially? Do we have to offer the market price, a percentage over the evaluated price? It was like
that was a long time
and then we
ago.
also talked about entrance to private property. Is it
can we go on private
can we go on
property and
private
do
property
certain
without
things with that?
yeah. All of that's supposed to come back to us in a special meeting or something.
Correct.
And that was not that long ago, so we didn't think that would be anytime soon.
Thank you for the last statement. I took that assignment to be specific to the property that the commission was discussing at the time. If the commission wants a more general kind of educational overview of eminent domain and how that works, we can do that in fairly short order. The assignment as I took it was to look at that particular property and analyze even, the ownership and title history and all that type thing. And, in each case with respect to eminent domain, you have to look at the type of the project that is anticipated and the necessity of the property for that project. You not only have to look at kind of what are the legal parameters, but what are the factual the facts that are supporting that as to whether or not we could exercise eminent domain.
As I remember, it was a more general discussion about eminent domain and how we could utilize it citywide in different ways, and kind of clarified and educated first and foremost, and then we could talk further about that.
Because we talked about eminent domain because of Price Boulevard when we
Yeah, I
had
know.
that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that came up.
So
Well, I didn't have notes from Price Boulevard. We haven't looked that back up. I've been working on that project, but we didn't have anything on a to-do list from then. I thought you guys were talking about last meeting or a couple meetings ago dealing with
Yeah.
Outreach Way.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that was
that's
the
when
other
it came out as a more general topic to include items like Price Boulevard. If we needed infrastructure in the East End, that we don't have an accumulation of many lots, and we talked about how we did it with Atwater and.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I think I
so-
may have misunderstood the scope. If you want something more general, that's not going to be difficult or time
Right,
consuming
and
to
it
do
was
for you at all.
larger, encompassing all of the city, as I remember it.
I don't remember it.
Well, you
encompassing the whole
weren't in
city.
support of it. You
Well,
didn't
I remember
support
that,
it.
but it was about a specific property.
That's when
I
we
thought.
talked about it, was
Yeah.
when we were talking about Outreach Way, but then we asked afterwards for a more general citywide.
Okay.
Okay. Anyways, regardless, you're saying that should we incorporate this into that discussion? And if the city attorney has just said that it wouldn't take long to do that, then maybe that would be the appropriate manner. I don't know.
Not for the overall educational component. I mean, if we're going to be looking at, we may be interested in this particular property. What are the different avenues? I mean, that's a pretty big question. That's much bigger than how does eminent domain work, and what would we need to do in general to invoke eminent domain.
Okay, so this question, if we talk about only these specific lots that we're talking about today, is a very short, easier answer to come by than, or not easier.
No,
That's going
ma'am,
to take months.
just the opposite.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to get clear in my head. That's now. So I guess we do need a motion then, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I'll give it a try.
I think it's completely different.
Let's see if we can get through this. All right, I'll move to have city manager and city attorney look to contact the property owners and research the opportunity of acquiring the parcels through conservation easements, eminent domain, or purchase, or any of those options to connect the R ditch to the Myakkahatchee Creek.
Second.
And
Almost.
sorry, I was giving the pause for the clerk.
Dramatic pause.
Dramatic.
And pursue the conversations with the school board regarding options for their property. Now,
Second.
done.
So now we have a motion on the floor by the Vice Mayor and City Clerk. You have that, correct?
Yes, ma'am, we always have it on the record.
Yeah. And that was seconded by Commissioner Luke. Do we have any any comments on that, Vice Mayor?
Just that I think, without looking at all these different pieces, I mean, if we do any one individually, it's really not going to satisfy the end goal of actually preserving the corridor. So we have to do the combination of these things to get us where we want to be.
Thank you. Commissioner Luke?
Definitely, that was my first question when this conversation started, so definitely supporting.
Excellent. Anyone else with any comments? Okay, so then we will go ahead and vote on that. And that is unanimous. Is there anything else? No? Okay. So now we are clear, City Manager.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. We do not have any more public comment.
No, we do not.
Awesome.
What
Commission
about-
communication, we're going to hold off on. Administrative and legal reports, anything? Nope. And we are adjourned.
What about 7F and G?
We have to go back.
That's a different meeting. We're in the
Oh,
road and
okay.
drainage meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
And that is 7:36.
7:36. We'll wait till everybody.
What do I got here? They don't know we're going into another meeting.
Hey, guys, do you want to let them know?
I thought, we're still talking about this. We have the F and
We
G.
still have to talk about Spring Haven.
What?
F and G.
Oh.
Yeah,
You mean
we're
the
still.
letter F.
Yeah.
We've got the second part of this.
Still have the second part of this. Now you know why I'm trying to speed it up. Yeah. We have,
Don't know.
where was it? The consent items F and G, the amendment to the agreement and the contract, yet to discuss.
Design agreement
Right.
and the reclaimed water.
Okay, so let's do this official. Today is Monday, November 13th, 2017. It is now 7:37. We are in the chambers. I am continuing the City Commission regular meeting. All those presents before are still here. And we left off with items 7F. So, City Manager, you have your light on?
I do, Mayor. 7F is, at this point, kind of pointless. So I would certainly recommend pulling that one because there's no point in designing something that we have no idea what we're designing, based on discussion at the Road and Drainage Special Meeting. 7G, I would, again, recommend pulling it at least until the next meeting where we find out, so the utilities has time to fully investigate whether or not any changes we might make would impact their reclaimed water project. So basically, if we just pull those two items at this point.
So would it be appropriate to just pull it, or, right? Would that be or just not?
They'll bring it back when they've got the answer.
So what would the motion be, is what I'm trying to get at.
I make a motion that we pull items F and G for further discussion at a future meeting.
Second.
Moving along, chop chop.
I don't think you can do that. You have to have a time certain, don't you?
Well, no.
Well, no, it's not an
Motion to
ordinance or
continue them
lesson.
to another meeting or to just not take any action on them.
Right, you wouldn't
place
take any
them on
action.
They can make a motion to place them on another meeting, move them to another meeting.
Without a date.
Yes.
Certain.
A future, they can say it that way, a future
That's
meeting.
what I said, future meeting.
Okay. That's contrary to what past
I know.
lawyers have told us, but okay. Awesome.
Well, you can continue an item for a date certain or for a date not certain.
Yeah, we don't know what the date's going to be. That's
No,
why I said a future
I
meeting.
totally agree.
The
Commissioner
actual-
McDowell.
the
I totally agree. I'm just telling you what
You can
we've
also get
been
totally
told in
away
the
with
past.
just not doing anything and not take any action
Right,
on
and
these
it
at all.
dies, right.
And then the
But
city
we don't
manager
want it
can
to
bring
die
them
because we
back.
want to have.
No, they can come back that way.
The city manager can bring them back at a future meeting.
Right. Okay. So the motion on the floor is to pull items F and G and have them on a future meeting, correct? Commissioner McDowell, do we have a second for that? Commissioner Luke, is there any conversation on that? Commissioner McDowell?
Gosh, no.
No.
We've had
Commissioner
enough.
Luke? No. Seeing no other lights, can we please go ahead and vote on that?
I drag it out when he does that.
You really
I
do.
know you do it.
Aren't you glad you waited?
God bless you. And that is unanimous. Thank you, folks, for putting up with us. Okay. Moving on to public comment, which we do not
We
have
don't
any.
have any.
And commission communication, let's just go right down the line. Commissioner Luke?
I already updated a little bit about what I did find out about that Community Restoration Fund coming from the interest from the incentive fund within the EDC. I believe past mayor, vice mayor has full knowledge of what was being discussed. Mayor Carazone may have some idea of what I'm discussing too, but it is something that I think at this point in time is a feather in our cap to be able to assist and us to be able to gain something from that dollar per person for years that we've been doing. So I think we need to move on that, and I am feeding information to the city manager so that he can forward it on to everybody. I did make a little visit to Manatee Memorial Hospital, Universal Health Center. He gave me a lot of information in regards to even the CON process, and right now they are in what he stated to me was a blackout from October 1 to December 1. He said there's nothing but the negative, or the other hospitals that don't want, you know, them to
appeals.
The appeals is about the only thing that can go on. And there has been 2 appeals, one being from Fawcett, which is also Inglewood, and from Sarasota Memorial. So there are 2 appeals. But he will not get any other information, nor did he say ACA would receive any. And here the decision will be December 1st. So he did teach me quite a bit. The hospital, of course, is extremely impressive. I have been there and Lakewood Ranch before, but so that was a nice visit seeing them, and I did learn a lot. The Real Estate Summit, kudos to staff and our Economic Development Department. It was a great event. Of course, the Butler, with the marathon events that we went to the other Saturday, Butler Park, Newcomer, and Biscayne, we were all there to all of them. Great Saturday. The ribbon cutting at the college was phenomenal, and so was the Veteran Day ceremonies.
Okay, Vice Mayor Yates?
Short version. Went to COG and basically highlighted all of the events that Commissioner Luke just went over. So it was there, and it was great, and everybody did a great job with those. Also mentioned the Spring Haven, as the city manager was saying earlier, so it was an opportunity to seek out, you know, to these other jurisdictions, see if they've dealt with any issues, you know, for wildlife and whatever ideas they may have as well for this corridor. So really was pleased that Dr. Bowden did express interest in conversation. So we can see the projects that we've done and successes we've had, so hopefully there's something there. And the city of Sarasota is looking to redo their ULDC. It seems like everybody is looking at redoing that, and they're looking at form-based codes. Venice was very excited. They're celebrating their 90th anniversary, and they had a really nice event. They had 5 living mayors. Their mayor's elected, so it's different than our city, you know, and they serve like 4-year think it's 4-year terms, but anyways, all 5 of them were at an event, and it turned out very nice. So they're going to have a video of that, kind of creating an archive there. So I don't know if everybody knows, but SRQ has a new airline, Elite Airline.
Oh.
Yep, and they're starting some direct flights to New York. Yeah. White Plains, New York. That's the other New York. Yeah. That's the other one.
Do they talk like you?
Wait till I go home and visit, and then I come back. You guys are really going to have fun. Our Minnesota League of Cities had our meeting there. Talked about some of these bills that have already been filed. I think I've already said how many bills have been filed, and the tree one is definitely getting attention by everybody. Yes. Everybody, all jurisdictions. And also the Minnesota League is looking at considering raising their membership dues by $100. So we had a little bit of a conversation about that. The budget is very healthy. Their fund's very healthy. I was opposed to doing that at this time. We're going to have another conversation so we can see how the monies are being used and more or less a budget for that before raising the membership dues. And what else? I already talked about the bills. I'm not even going to go over that. I had the opportunity to ask Senator Stubbe if he was interested in coming to the commission and doing a presentation in December, thinking of the December 5th meeting. And this was probably weeks ago that I did that, so it was before a lot of the bills were filed and everything. So, but anyways, I think it's a great opportunity. Absolutely. I think it's a great opportunity for us. So he can't do it the 5th because of committees going on, but the 12th is good. So if we're okay with it, I'll go ahead and set that up at a 1 o'clock. It's a 1 o'clock meeting. So if we could maybe schedule him in at the beginning of the meeting, that's the way I would propose adding it to the agenda if we're okay with that. And I'll tell him he's only got 15 minutes. Yeah.
I think with our senator, we need to be a little bit flexible.
Yeah, I was just kidding when I said that. Right. But yeah, so it's a great opportunity. So I'll go ahead and firm that up. And that's it. Said I'd keep it short.
Awesome. Commissioner Hanks?
Toured Manatee and Lakewood Ranch hospitals, great hospitals. I was very, it was really nice to see the awards, like what Lakewood Ranch wins, and their process is a standard bearer. Many hospitals across the country are saying, "Hey, show us your process," because they have a process which just eliminates mistakes. And so that was real nice. And then I had something else, but it's out in my truck. I forgot to go get it, so I don't remember what it is. So next time I'll bring that up.
Awesome. Thank you. Commissioner McDowell.
Well, we'll start and be very quick. I will went to the Veterans Day ceremony on Saturday. That was great. Thank you to the staff for setting it up, taking it down. And Veterans Day here at City Hall for our employees. That was really, really cool. The setting of the table was just absolutely moving. It was phenomenal. I hope we videotape it next year and kind of showcase that because that was neat. The wellness fair that was for the employees, I attended that. Great job again by staff. Ribbon cutting for Shannon Stobbs Library and the technical school. Excellent, excellent. Some great things are happening in our city, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. Newcomer Day had a lot of people there. I think this was one of the more busier newcomer days. Had a lot of people signing the letter for the hospital. So Commissioner Hanks, that was a fantastic idea that you shared with us to use those venues to get some more hospital letters. Real Estate Summit, again, kudos to staff for putting it on, a great summit. All the ribbon cutting ceremonies, they're great. Fire Station 85 is beautiful, went to that. And of course, trick-or-treating was great. So, thank you.
Thank you, and I don't think I have to say anything but ditto to everything you all said. City manager.
Oh.
Oh, what?
I'll save it for another time.
Okay, city manager.
I'd just like to thank you all for attending the Veterans Day celebration we had for employees. The one out in the public is great, but it's nice to honor our employees who are also veterans. Personally, I appreciate it as well, as I am one of those employees. But no, I think that was a great ceremony we had, and I appreciate the commission allowing us to do that every year. I think it's a great thing for our employees and helps build their morale as well. So that's all I have for today.
And city attorney?
No report.
Awesome. That's what I like to hear. City clerk?
I do have.
Aye, vey.
One little thing. I just wanted to.
One little thing. She's hanging out with you too long. Go ahead, one little thing.
The commission we have a meeting scheduled for November 30th for the charter review, to continue with the charter review, and I was wondering if there is a possibility that we may need to reschedule that.
You're wondering if there's a possibility we need to?
I am.
So here's the deal, folks. I will not be here November 30th. That's why she's looking to see if we have to reschedule that.
I'm booked. I mean,
That's my D-Day. I am actually going to go in and get something done for a change on my back. So I won't be there. And that's a special meeting with the Charter Review Advisory.
Well, it's not a joint meeting with the charter review.
No, it's about the charter changes.
It's about
Okay.
the charter changes, and of course, we always invite the charter review to come, but I just wanted to make sure.
Right. So you can do it with 4 of you, because there is nothing that says you can't. Or do you want to reschedule it? It is completely up to you. I'm okay either way.
Are we looking to ultimately put something on the ballot for 2018?
I mean, we were talking open houses and community forums and things like that, so that would
2018.
that would be a really big rush, but it could be done too. I mean, we got vice mayor that could, run the meeting instead of trying to reschedule, because it's all, whatever we discuss at that point is going to have to be brought back up again too. I mean, nothing's finalized, so as long as it's discussion, I'm good with letting vice mayor run the meeting and we just continue from where we left off. It's been a while since we left off.
The reason why I asked if we were trying to get this on anything for election, for the ballot for 2018, is if there is not a huge push for that, and I know we haven't even had this discussion, if there isn't that huge push for it, I would say, what's the point of having the meeting if mayor's not going to be here? And that way then everybody is still participating in it. But if there is the desire to have something on the ballot for 2018, then yes, we would have to proceed.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, Mayor, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
And this has been a long process, and very long process. I think we were near to almost the end
We are so
of it.
close.
We are very close
That's
to
why
it.
I said it really didn't matter.
Well, I know you spent a lot of time going through, and you had your comments too, which we're
We
going
were
to be
at
considering. So,
districting, I think where we left off
was it
was at
districting? Yeah.
districting.
and I know you had a lot of input into that too. So it's kind of hard for us to talk about your suggestions that we have compiled together without you actually being there. That's something that I don't think we should rush, and I do think that the full commission should be part of it. So we'll try and find
I don't want to be a part of it. I mean, what are you saying?
This is our 4th meeting on this subject. So,
and it's the
She
entirety.
wants out of it so bad she's going to go under the knife.
thank you.
Here's your sign, right?
Here's your sign.
I mean, we may not be able to find a date in December, but we'll pick
Right.
it up in January. And you know what? If it's not ready and ripe for the 2018, then it's not.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything
This is so
pressing.
overwhelming, it's going to take more than one election to really address, because there are just so
I mean,
many.
you're talking about something that's
It's huge.
intended to be forever.
Right.
Intended, I mean, it's not going to be, but you know what I mean. It's a long standing document.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't need to be rushed at all.
I think we should find another date.
Yeah, I think we should find another date.
Okay, while little Miss Patsy, I got one little tiny thing turned into a big thing. So if we've got consensus, it seems to go ahead and reschedule that charter subject.
That little thing called the
That
charter.
little thing called charter. Okay, thank you very much.
One little thing.
Is there anything else, Patsy?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am. All right.
God help us when she has. God help us when she has a big thing.
I know, right?
Right?
We're in trouble.
Yep.
I'm tired. My accent gets much heavier when I get tired.
It's okay.
And when we hang out a little more.
That's what it is. We love you. Okay, and Miss Pito, you have anything you want to share?
I have nothing.
Okay, awesome. So with that, we are.
Well, I had something. And
Go
it just
ahead.
slipped my
I'm
mind.
sorry, Mayor. Our Vice Mayor, you had your light on. I didn't even know it. I thought it was a rerun from
No,
before.
that's okay.
Okay, what do you got?
I forgot.
You forgot.
I'll just end with just saying again how much I've really enjoyed working with you guys. Thank you so much for the time that I had as the mayor. Look forward to the next year and thank you for the opportunity as far as vice mayor. So look forward to it. Always have lots.
You did a great job.
Yes.
Taught us well. Thank you.
Thank you, and we are adjourned.
Thank you, Miss Joan. Thank you.